Good evening. I call to order the administrative meeting of the Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners for Wednesday, December 11th, 2019. We are going to begin tonight's meeting with a silent invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Angie Vecchio, and in English and in Spanish by Commissioner Quezada. All right, Madam County Manager, are there any changes or additions to tonight's agenda?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, there is one change, and staff is requesting for item 12, let's see, 12C, the behavioral health, the $30 million capital investment MOU to be diverted to the first meeting in January.
All right, I move that change. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Any other changes?
Yes, I'm wondering if we can move item 4B to 4A because Sergeant Ruben Franco has to go to a function. And I was wondering if I could do that right away. And then I was wondering if I could move from the consent agenda, and I just want to be clear that I'm going to support this, but I would like to move the behavioral health dollars for the tiny homes so we can discuss some of the recommendations from the steering committee, and I just want to discuss that to see if that's something valuable to us or not. But I'm not moving it to oppose it. I just want to discuss it. So if we can move that from consent to
approvals.
I don't know where. What did I say, Julie?
So because this item does have a resolution, generally it would be under adoption of resolution as 11J, but I'll defer to the chair on where she'd like to place that.
11J is fine. All right,
Okay.
so we have a motion to move item K off the consent agenda to, what did you say, to 11, right? To adoption of resolution. And what was the other one? Oh, to move up the
Yeah, just the presentation from
5B to 4. All right. I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Commissioner Talbert.
Madam Chair, if we could just move again for a discussion purpose, item D, Communication Services, naming of the Bernalillo County Courthouse to discussion. I think we've talked about in the past when we've named things, just to have an open discussion regarding that.
All right. So that would move 9D to approval, so that would become 12G. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of that change, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right. That. All right. We are now on to, we'll start with certificates and awards 5B as requested by Commissioner Quezada, New Mexico State Police Sergeant Ruben Franco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sergeant, if you could come up to the podium, please, and I would like to read this recognition in your honor, sir. And I know that you have up to the podium, yes. I know you have a function with your daughter, and so I wanted to make sure that we got through this, okay? Thank you for showing up. Look, this is a certificate of recognition given to Sergeant Ruben Franco, New Mexico State Police, for your swift and courageous action that saved the lives of 3 residents of Bernalillo County. On October 31st, 2019, while off duty, you witnessed smoke rising from an area of 10th Street and Central Avenue. Concerned for the general welfare, you investigated the smoke and discovered a building fire with 3 people trapped inside. Upon discovering this emergency, you swiftly breached the property fence, rushed over into the burning building with a fire extinguisher in hand. While battling flames, you successfully rescued the 3 people trapped inside, forging a safe escape from a very horrible inferno. Your swift decision to render aid prevented worse injuries befalling these rescuees. Your courageous action upheld the highest traditions of community police service. Thank you for your heroic dedication to protect and serve the people of Bernalillo County. Presented this day, December 11th, 2019, signed by all Board of County Commissioners. So Sergeant, if you'd like to say a few words.
Commissioner, I really want to appreciate it. Commissioner Quesada, I very much appreciate the words that you just said. In this job, we don't do it for recognition, obviously. I'm glad I was in the right place at the right time. And again, please accept my apology for having to leave early. It's my daughter's Christmas play, and I already missed one function, so I'm trying not to miss another one.
Yeah,
So.
we know. So come up and receive this, Sergeant.
All right, we are now on to 4A, which is acknowledgement of the Bernalillo County Wildland Firefighter Crew. Commissioner Quezada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is acknowledgement. Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners is by here acknowledge. So the Bernalillo County Fire Department, if you're here, come on down. Chief, thank you so much. So I know we have a long meeting. I'm going to go ahead. This is acknowledgement that the Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners does hereby acknowledge Bernalillo County Fire Department members of the New Mexico Task Force. Forest fires are terrible tragedies, often burning thousands of acres, endangering lives and property, and requiring the assistance of numerous agencies to contain, protect the community. From October 28th to November 6, 2019, firefighters from Bernalillo County traveled to California as part of a task force under the Emergency Management Assistant Compact to provide wildland firefighting aid to the Easy and Maria fires in Ventura County. These firefighters were involved in protecting the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library while fighting the Easy fire in Ventura County, along with Albuquerque Fire and Rescue and the Corrales Fire Department. 6 Bernalillo County Fire Department members of the wildfire team worked as part of the New Mexico Task Force to suppress these dangerous fires. While in California, the Bernalillo County firefighters provided structure protection, constructed and maintained fire lines, and performed initial attacks on 2 of the fires. The Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners would like to thank the members of the New Mexico Task Force for the Bernalillo County Fire Department for their tireless dedication and service to protecting lives and property in communities nationwide. I would like to Thank personally Engine 54, Lieutenant Steve Ozenby, firefighter, engineer, operator, engineer Joshua Skordal, engine boss, firefighter Maggie Gronwald, engine operator, engine boss trainee, and Brush 50, Lieutenant Damian Gonzalez, engine operator, engine boss trainee, Lieutenant Mike Benton, engine boss, and firefighter Santos Aragon, firefighter, engine operator trainee. Thank you, guys.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Quesada, thank you all for recognizing these brave men and women. They put their life on the line every day for us, and as State Police Officer said, we don't do it for recognition, we do it because that's our calling. So thank you again for taking the time to recognize us, and thank you to the men and women standing next to me for all they do every day.
Everybody wants, you got the whole paparazzi list. Okay, now right here we go. 3, 2, 1. One more for backup. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much.
All right, we are now on 5A, which is recognition of our Bernalillo County Metropolitan Detention Center, individuals who are responsible for a milestone in our jail safety. Welcome, Chief. I want to welcome everyone from MDC who has come tonight and who is responsible for this amazing milestone. You may have, certainly we've been informed, and I think it's been covered by the media, that for the first time, at least since I've been here, maybe ever, MDC is in compliance with the Prevention of Rape. Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA, which is amazing, and I just wanted to acknowledge you tonight, Chief, and all of your leadership and all of your staff in making this happen, because I know this is incredible and something that I know is a challenge for jails across the country. So I want to read this and then give you a opportunity to speak. So we have certificates of recognition for each of these employees for your outstanding work and dedication as a member of the Bernalillo County Metropolitan Detention Center Prison Rape Elimination Act team. PREA was passed in 2003 and is the first federal law of its kind intended to deter the sexual assault of prisoners. Correctional facilities are audited for 45 standards under this act. The Metropolitan Detention Center completed its audit in October 2019, reaching full compliance for the very first time. Reaching full compliance under PREA is a tremendous accomplishment for the MDC staff, who have worked tirelessly to implement numerous corrective actions at the facility to reach that goal. Facility upgrades, new policies, revamped investigation processes, and increased training were just some aspects of the vigorous work by this team. And the County Commission thanks all of you for your public service to the Metropolitan Detention Center and for your service to our community. These are presented today, December 11th, 2019, and these are signed by all 5 commissioners. So thank you for your work. I'd love for you to just talk about the significance of this, because this is huge.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Madam Chair, Commission, thank you very much for the recognition. I would like to introduce the individuals that actually made this happen. Director Rosanna Otero, Captain Step, Nan Rush, Roman Varela, Andy Ray, investigator, Ms. Brenda Iwado, and I am missing somebody else, aren't I? Bill Tenney, he is not here at the time. I have my command staff here. I'll be real quick. I'll tell you, 18 months ago, I was involved in one of the worst audits I ever had in my life. It came in, they said, I'll tell you one thing, you've only passed one thing, and that's it. We went from that to this in 18 months. It is, it's an outstanding accomplishment. And may I add, we are the only county in New Mexico to receive this accreditation. So, thank you.
So again, I want to thank you. We have certificates for each of you, so please come up so we can give them to you.
It's all squeeze in once they finish handshaking. Or taller than me in the front. Maybe shifted it this way. Okay. Oh, there's still. Okay. Let's see. We're gonna do this so we can see everybody's face, so that's the trick. So far, so good. It just depends where the chief stands.
That's okay, Ralph, we're waiting for you. It's okay, Chief.
Chief, come on this way.
Yeah, Chief, please
Good. Stand over here. We're pretty balanced up. And
Aw,
okay,
beautiful.
Let's see here. I think I see all the faces. Great. 1, 2, 3. And then one more for backup. 3, 2, 1. Boom. Thank you.
Woo. Good job, thank you. See you. Good job.
All right, we are now on 8A. I move we approve the minutes of the November 12, 2019 administrative meeting. I have a second from Commissioners O'Malley and Piscotti. Any changes, corrections? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are now on approval of the consent.
Madam Chair, if we could go back to public comment number 7.
Man, how did I miss that? I always forget that. All right, we are now in public comment. Just a refresher of the rules. Everyone who has signed up for public comment will have 2 minutes to speak. Bell will sound after 90 seconds has elapsed, giving you 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. Please do respect those time limits and everybody who has come here to speak. Julie will read the name, so please come up to the front and be ready to speak when you hear your name. Thank you.
We have 17 signed up for this evening. Don Schrader, Chris Christie, Linda Dietz, Courtney Montoya.
Does your God approve us buying much stuff no one needs while millions worldwide are hungry, cold, sick, homeless? According to the Bible, Jesus was born poor, lived poor, died poor. Jesus damned addiction to money. To celebrate Christmas buying loads of stuff for people who already have far too much is as crazy as celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday by joining the Ku Klux Klan. 200 years ago, about 1 billion people lived on Earth. Now over 7 billion. Sadly, billions worldwide crave the deadly American dream of big house, fancy cars, many high-tech gadgets, jet vacations, eating meat and dairy. A nightmare disaster for life on Earth. Unless we make huge changes, what will the Earth be like in 2093 when babies born now are my age of 74? Do young people who see this and give a damn want to have babies? I was spoiled as a kid. With much help from many people, I changed. Regardless of what other people do, I am responsible for how I travel, what I buy, what I eat, how I poison the earth. I enjoy living simply and healthy. We can wake up. We can change.
Christie, Linda Dietz, Courtney Montoya, Jerry Gallegos, Nancy Montano.
Good evening, and thank you for listening to our comments this evening. My name is Christie. I'm a representative of the El Camino Real North Valley Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to speak about the Sandia Ranch property. On the agenda tonight, under 11 resolutions, I is a resolution put forth for $1.5 million worth of funding with a little caveat in very tiny writing. And I would like to have this recorded in public and as an audit trail, because there's always intent to do the right thing, but quite often finagling occurs. And right now we have a lot of controversy on this piece of property within our neighborhood association, and I would just like to make it known that we have a concern about the little piece that says an anticipated 4 acres be sold in this resolution. It's in teeny tiny little print, and I don't know that there's an overhead here, but it's in this like 6-point font, and it just says an anticipated sale of 4 acres. Not to who, not when, only fair market, and not why. We believe that we know who this property is to be sold for, and we do not believe a process has been set forth that is forthcoming. We have many meetings. In our last meeting of the 4th, when this resolution was ratified by the people who conducted the meeting, nothing was shared, not the funding and not the 4-acre anticipated sale. We would just like to have that as a matter of record. Thank you. 40 years we've been working on this project. We have time to wait and do things by the rules. We don't need to rush anything. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Linda Dietz, and I'm here to speak to the resolution number 11I, which has to do with the allocation of a $1.5 million to the Mid-North Valley Agro-Recreational Complex, Sandia Ranch Phases 1 and 2. I live at 7017 Edith Boulevard Northeast, which is less than 500 feet from the Sandia Ranch property. And my family has lived next to that property for almost 60 years. After reflecting on conversations I had this morning with Parks and Rec Director Debbie Jo Amalger and Manager John Barney, I have concluded the resolution is Commissioner O'Malley's effort to support our North Valley community with uses on Sandia Ranch that everybody wants. I did speak to them about the troubling sentence which Christie referred to you, which is an anticipated sale of 4 acres out of the 17 acres on the property. Debbie Jo initially said that they did not put that sentence in their request for the funding, but then she called and they confirmed that yes, Parks and Rec did put the money in, excuse me, not money, that sentence about selling 4 acres to show that there were other possible resources of revenue for the project. I was in a quandary. On one hand, I think it's very important to support the resolution. on its face, but for that one sentence. Debbie Jo confirmed in her second call that the sentence is not binding on the county. It does not require them to sell the property to the school, which we all know it's intended, the thought is that we've been discussing now since February, to a school. She said in her report to the commissioners, which she will present to you later when it comes up on the agenda, she will confirm at this date she does not know what will happen with the school at this point. So it's still in flux. Plus, this is important, I'm willing to say that the resolution should pass and that the controversy over the school whether the school can be purchased from the county, it really needs to be considered at a later date. But it's important that the resolution be considered positively for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Jerry Gallegos, Nancy Montano, Robert Trujillo, Twyla McComb.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Jerry Gallegos. I'm a resident of the Southwest Mesa near Coors and Central. I resided there over 40-plus years. I'm here in support of the visitor center that's being proposed at the top of 9 Mile Hill. This is something that many of us have been longing for many years. I see it as a site that will be not only used by people that live outside of Albuquerque, tourists coming through, but residents of the city of Albuquerque. We haven't had anything like this in any way, shape, or form that I can envision here. And the way it's being proposed, it's not just something that somebody could stop and they say, I just want to use the restroom. No, we're looking for something that's going to be a site that not only the residents of Albuquerque, the state of New Mexico can use, as well as people traveling through. The amenities that are being proposed are something that is really needed. I always look at my side of town as something that's been kind of deleted from action. I want action to happen. I'm going to use something from a movie that said, if you build it, they will come. I think that's what's going to happen in this area because it's been something that our people that I represent, Southwest Alliance of Neighbors, West Central Community Development Group, and also the Alamosa Neighborhood Association, we've been trying to get this going for many, many years, and I hope with your help it comes to fruition. Thank you very much.
Robert Trujillo, Twyla McComb, Barbara Baca, Bob Cleve, Jim Tilley.
Robert Trujillo, 508 Bear Canyon Lane Northeast, regarding the Sandia Ranch property. Bernalillo County asked the general public to vote yes to a general obligation bond to purchase the property. The people responded with an outstanding vote of yes. The people were promised green spaces, community farming projects, trails, and possibly a satellite community center. We trusted our officials to keep their promise and do the right thing. For several years, it looked like Bernalillo County staff were going to keep the promises they had made, and everything was good. Last February, the good people of Bernalillo County were notified that the plans had changed. Promises would not be kept. The people were told that Commissioner O'Malley wanted a school on the property. She's been trying to fund the school project for about half a decade. It appears she has been acting as an agent for the academy for years. Her endeavor started with her tenure as an Albuquerque City Councilor and have resurfaced as a county commissioner. She wants to sell 5 acres of public land to a privately owned public school. Her endeavors are noble. However, promises are promises. If Bernalillo County is set on giving or selling away property purchased with general obligation bond fund money, then the people who voted for the bond money should have the opportunity to vote for the abrogation of the agreement. We, the people, were promised certain uses of the property in exchange for our vote. Those promises have not been, those promises should not be thrown to the wayside. Promises are promises, lies are lies. Please keep the promises made to the people and keep the acreage for the original intent stated by Bernalillo County staff to the people in exchange for their vote of confidence. So. Thank you.
Barbara Baca, Bob Cleve, Jim Tilley, William Hoffman, Angie Vecchio.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Baca. Again, I'm with the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, the Board of Directors. I'm here just to speak in favor of a resolution sponsored by Commissioner O'Malley. It's 11B on your agenda, but I just wanted to briefly describe what that is, and I'm very excited that it's a planning partnership in cooperation with MRGCD, the county, if you approve it tonight, the city of Albuquerque, and the Water Utility Authority, with involvement with the South Valley Regional Association of Acequias. And the whole purpose of this resolution is to work together in partnership to celebrate the Middle Rio Grande Valley and the unique cultural landscape of the acequia system. So as you look at the resolution, I will be here if you have any questions about that, but I urge your support for this resolution, which is so near and dear to our hearts in the valley, and thank you for your support.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Bob Cleve. I'm with the Sports Commission. First of all, I wanted to say thanks to you guys, your commissioners, the county manager and her staff, Debbie Joe, John Barney, who work hand in hand with us on all our projects for all your support. And we really appreciate it. It doesn't go unnoticed by myself or the rest of the 19-member Sports Commission. And I'd like to acknowledge, and all you commissioners know, that Jim Tilley has been the greatest guy for a volunteer that you could have. He's chairing these steering committees. He's going to all the other subcommittees, and I don't know how he keeps his day job. But anyway, moving on. I think under County Parks and Rec 11H, I think Commissioner Hart Stebbins has put a request in for an appropriation of $1 million to look at continuing the work on our project at Mesa del Sol. The phase 2, the $1 million would help with finishing phase 2 of the 3-phase project. And we would, as a 19-member group, on behalf of them, and I have tried to get literature to all of you with everybody's signature in the letter, and also the plans from the architect. I believe that you all have them. So I'll turn it over to Jim. He's next.
Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I am Jim Tilley. I'm the chairman of the steering committee for the Mesa del Sol Regional Outdoor Sports Complex, and I'm here to urge acceptance of Resolution 11H, I think is what it is. There's a couple of things that are very important on this. First off, from the Sports Commission's point of view and the steering committee's point of view, this continues a momentum that we've sort of been building in the city between community stadium, the baseball, and then the baseball complex. We're starting to build some recognizable and usable and important facilities, and I think the Mesa del Sol Regional Outdoor Sports Complex is a great next step. The second thing I'd like to offer to encourage your acceptance of this resolution is that we're going to be facing some interesting times with the legislature and the city council in the next few weeks, trying to get help out there and to speed the project along. And this $1 million makes a statement for the county that you guys are all in on this project, and that you are looking down the road to the advantages that we're going to have if we can build this complex the way it's pictured now. So anyway, I urge your acceptance of 11H, and hope to speak to you again soon on the same matter and on improvements. Thank you.
William Hoffman, Angie Vecchio, Becky Davis, Luis Hernandez, Janet Patterson.
Yes, my name is William Hoffman. I live at 7524 Cricket Hill Northeast at Vista del Norte, and I came to speak in support of three issues here, three programs. One is the behavioral health initiatives. I've been involved since 1970 in behavioral health initiatives, particularly regarding community programs, and I support strongly the efforts that you all are doing. I also have been involved in homeless programs since 1983 with the city of Albuquerque, and I strongly support the tiny home village construction program. I've also been involved for a long time in open space when I worked with the city of Albuquerque, and I support the various programs you have here, Mesa del Sol and Sandia Ranch. I understand the concern that people have on Sandia Ranch. I was there when the old Vista Sandia shut down, and all of the efforts that the people there have done to try to make it, whatever happens there, to be a benefit to the community, and I understand some of the concerns. I hope there can be a way to move forward and support all of the concepts. I personally would like to see a community center in that area, but that's something that can wait. I think there are some other programs that really need some support, and I hope that you all can find ways to move forward on these issues. Thank you very much.
Madam Commissioner, members of the Commission, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come before you to support the administrative resolution directing staff to audit MDC vendor service and goods, and good for the fees and report its findings. Again, my name is Angie Vecchio. I'm a long-term child and family advocate. One of the whereases in this resolution speaks about incarcerated parents being an enormous ACE risk, an adverse childhood experience risk for children. Excuse me. The reason for that is because kids have enormous angst about where their parents are. Upon the arrest of a parent, oftentimes children don't even know their parents have been arrested. Parents get arrested, kids come home from school, empty house. Just having contact with their parents, knowing they're okay, is enormously important. But beyond that, they oftentimes place inappropriately blame on those who don't deserve the blame, on the police officers who arrested them, on where they think their parents are and may be being mistreated. Contact between them is incredibly important, and that's why it tends to be a risk factor that goes on for life. The angst that they have never gets resolved until we help it get resolved. We all walk this earth hoping to do no harm, making money on the backs of those who could least afford it and those who suffer most is doing harm. So I'm delighted that you're going to look at this, that you're going to really hopefully see the harm that it does. And I'm asking that this be the beginning. There was a time we had contact visitations in the jail and brought children to be held by their parents, brought babies to be held. We need to do that again. This, again, is just the beginning. Charging for a video visit is outrageous. I'd like to say one other thing because Susana didn't get up on time to sign up. Commissioner Casado, I understand that you're coming to PB&J and reading to children. As the founder of PB&J and its executive director for many, many years, thank you very much for doing that. Thank you.
Becky Davis, Luis Hernandez, Janet Patterson.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Becky Davis with Avalon Neighborhood Association, Westgate Heights Neighborhood Association. I'm here in support of approval 12D, Commissioner Quesada's Route 66 Visitors Center, Phase 1. This visitor center on the southwest Mesa is intensely needed. All the proposed aspects, from Burnco Station, Fire Station, to the Visitor Center, to the Music Museum, and the proposed restaurant, will amplify the southwest options and provide New Mexico information and services to the County of Bernalillo and City of Albuquerque. We need this visitors center very much. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, County Commissioners. My name is Luis Hernandez. I am a board member of the West Central Community Development Group, as well as a lifelong resident of the Southwest Mesa, as well as the west side of Albuquerque. And I'm here in support of item 12D on the agenda, Phase 1 construction funding for the Route 66 Visitor Center. And, this is a project that has been, in the works for quite some time. And, simply put, I urge your support. I took a look online and I found an economic study that was done a while back by Rutgers University. And a lot of folks have not really come from this standpoint. And just, simply put, the Mother Road, Route 66, has realized significant economic accomplishments, much of that driven by the dynamo of heritage travel, which is Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is the west side of Albuquerque, right? For the most part, these travelers are attracted by the special historic related character of the Mother Road, historic sites, monuments, vintage restaurants, hotels, not to mention visitors centers, which is what is proposed at the top of 9 Mile Hill. Now, it's important to note that mostly middle and upper income travelers spend an average, and this is again about 10 years ago, an average of about $1,500 to $2,000 per travel party. We talk about economic growth here in our city. I feel that this is an economic development driver for the city of Albuquerque, specifically the west side area in the west side corridor of Albuquerque, which has been neglected for many, many, many years. So from an economic development standpoint, I simply encourage you guys to really look at and support the Route 66 Visitor Center. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Janet Patterson. I live at 205 Tornasol, just off of North Edith. And I wanted to speak briefly about item 11I, the Mid-North Valley Agro Recreation Complex. I'm very excited to have open space in that area. There's very little remaining. And I'm excited to see funding proposals for planning. However, I am concerned by the possibility of the county selling any portion of that 17 and a half or so developable acreage. If 4 acres can be sold, can 4 more acres be sold? So I am concerned about the possibility of that full 17 acres not being put to use as open space. Thank you very much.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. All right. So we've already taken care of approval of the minutes. We are now on the consent agenda. Let me see if we have any. All right, we have no resolution numbers, ordinance. I move approval of the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously. We are now on adoption of ordinance amendments to the county code. We'll start with 10A, which is the Bernalillo County Paid Time Off Ordinance Amendments. May I have a resolution, an ordinance number, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance 2019-32.
All right, and we will start with a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
We have 6 signed up to speak.
All right, so again, just to review our policy, everyone who signed up to speak will have 2 minutes. A bell will sound after 90 seconds has elapsed, giving you 30 seconds to wrap up. Julie will call the names. Please do come forward when you hear your name called and be ready to speak.
Michaela Gallegos, Lynn Anderson, Marian Mendez Serra, Eric Griego.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michaela Gallegos. When I was 6 or 7, I hounded my parents for a pony for Christmas. I was good. I'm mostly nice to my brother, worked really hard in school, and I felt I needed a pony. You're asking, so it's holidays, what does a pony have to do with paid time off? In August, when you approved the paid time off ordinance, that was like giving workers in Bernalillo County who do not currently have the opportunity to earn paid time off a pony. With the changes, there's been some adjustments. Some people get a little different pony than others, but at the end of the day, workers still get a pony. I'm here tonight to thank you for passing the ordinance, continuing to make it work, and ask you to please, at the end of the day, make sure that all employees who work in Bernalillo County, do not currently earn timed off, continue to get that pony, especially with the holidays. They need that bonus. They need that security that with flu season coming up, allergies in spring, that when they have to take time off to take care of a loved one, that they don't lose wages. Again, thank you for passing the ordinance, and I'm looking forward to employees in Bernalillo County having that benefit and being able to care for their loved ones. Thank you.
Lynn Anderson, Marian Mendez Serra, Eric Griego, Marilyn Stoops, Karen Navarro.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'm Marilyn Stoops, and I serve on the board of Albuquerque FaithWorks Collaborative, an alliance of 8 congregations, primarily in the Nob Hill area, seeking wholeness for our community as we learn, serve, and advocate for those living on the margins who come to our churches seeking help. With this goal in mind, we are here tonight to speak in favor of the paid time off ordinance on tonight's agenda. Albuquerque FaithWorks has employed a licensed social worker to help the homeless and near homeless knocking on our doors. We are learning that there is a path to homelessness for those who are employed and receiving a low income. They risk eviction from their homes if they have an unexpected illness or an accident, or if their children need extra attention at school, or if some personal business needs to be taken care of during regular working hours. For example, some low-income folks are single and don't have a partner to rely on, or veterans seeking benefits need to do that during the regular VA business day. Some low-income folks may be living in their cars and have storage units for the bulk of their household possessions. These storage places charge overdue rental payments, much like the payday loan businesses, to the point where low-income people end up losing all they possess. These are just a couple of examples of how paid time off could lessen the financial burdens they bear. Albuquerque FaithWorks Collaborative urges the approval of paid time off for low-income workers. It could prevent homelessness in our community. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Eric Griego, New Mexico Working Families. I just wanted to just stand in support of maintaining the progress we've made on paid time off. I appreciate all the work that commissioners and staff have put in. We are concerned that there seems to be ongoing efforts to amend it in a direction that's with less coverage and less validity for workers. I think the county's done something historic, and I would just encourage the commissioners to honor that, the passage that happened a couple months ago, and that to really resist efforts to do anything else that would further water down the ordinance. I think it's something you'd be proud of, and I think it's a huge compromise between some of the groups who work with these frontline workers and some of the small businesses. and I appreciate your efforts to make it the best it can be for working people in Albuquerque. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Tonight, I'm going to read a statement from a participant in ABQ Faith Works Collaborative who was going to be here tonight but is ill, so she was unable to come and read it herself. So I'm going to read it in the first person. Good evening, Commissioners. I am Eva. I am a Navajo, and I am here today to speak about paid time off and my relationship with ABQ Faith Works Collaborative. ABQ Faith Works hired a social worker this summer named Valerie, and I met her while eating lunch at one of the 8 churches that she works with, where I have eaten every Sunday for the last few years. For the last 3 years, I have been homeless and just recently got an apartment of my own. My relationship with Valerie and the churches is important to me, and we have a very special bond. Tonight, I wanted to say that paid time off for someone like me is very important. One day of unpaid time could be the same as paying an electric bill or gas bill. Without paid time off for things like an illness, needing to take care of specific business like a family death or child care needs, could make the chances of homelessness higher. I also want to speak for those who are paying overbearing rent or can't find housing at all, as well as those without transportation. People are working 2 jobs to make ends meet, having to walk at 10 p.m. at night or trying to find a job where they can make sure they have a way home safely. For people like this and like me, unpaid time is terrible and dangerous to our lives. Without pay, this often leads to people taking out high interest or payday loans, which makes us poorer and in worse positions. In the past, to make ends meet, I took those loans out to pay bills, and it made things worse financially. If my employer does not value me as a person to help me take care of myself by taking time off when I need it, this is also as hurtful. To question whether employees deserve 1 hour per week of paid time off makes me question whether decision makers or employers are with the people. I would hope you all support paid time off for someone like me. I am a person, I matter, and I am willing to work for what I need.
And that concludes the public hearing.
Great. I think it would be helpful at this point maybe to have maybe someone from legal sort of outline what the amendments, the proposed amendments are tonight.
Hannah Bell's been working extensively on these, so she's going to present those.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. There are a few amendments up tonight. The first amendment is Commissioner Piscotty's amendment, which is to change the effective date of the ordinance from January 1st to July 1st of 2020. There's also one other slight amendment similar to that, which would change the language in section 3 under letter B for A and B, including some language that also mirrors the effective date of the law. There's also a couple of amendments proposed by Commissioner Hart-Stebbins. One of those amendments is to change the enforcement provision, which is in section 4, to a mediation type enforcement provision. And there's also a change to section 6A, which is Commissioner Maggie Hart-Stebbins' amendment, which would add language to the end of section 6A. And I think that's all that is published at this time.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, I'm going to move some technical, what I consider to be technical amendments that are clarifying language. As this has been published, there have been. And actually, Hannah, if you would just stay to answer questions. You know, as this has been reviewed over the last several months, there have been a couple questions about what exactly is meant by this. So I want to move a couple changes. I think commissioners all received these from our legal department hopefully have had a chance to review. So the first amendment I'd like to move is to Section 2 under definitions. I don't have a line number, but it would be under the definition of employee, and this would be, it would just be to delete the language that says within the unincorporated limits of the county. So I move that amendment. That is to clarify exactly who is covered by this ordinance. I'd like to move that. We have a second? Sure, and maybe, so we have a motion and second, and if you would please explain this amendment.
Certainly. Madam Chair, Commissioners, this amendment is on page 2 of the ordinance. It's line number 22. It would strike out the language after in a year, and that language that would be stricken out is within the unincorporated limits of the county. If you look further down in the same section of definitions, under employer, employer is who is going to be providing the paid time off, and the employer's physical premise, those employers that will be subject to the paid time off ordinance will have a physical premise in the unincorporated portion of the county. And those employees who work for those employers will all be entitled to receive the paid time off benefit under the ordinance. So this would just strike out the language that says only those employees who are performing work in the unincorporated parts of the county.
Commissioner Talbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm trying to understand that related to if they're employed by an employer in the unincorporated area, they qualify.
That is correct.
That would be that's the definition we're creating or we're fixing?
We would be fixing,
Okay.
Commissioner Talbert.
So it'll just be employers in the unincorporated county and the employees that work for them in the unincorporated county?
That is correct.
Okay, so if my business is licensed in the city of Albuquerque and I do work in the unincorporated areas, not part of that definition?
That is correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Comments? I mean, I think this is a clarification about who exactly is covered, and it can be either the employer who is located in the unincorporated county or the actual location of where the services are performed, where the work is performed. And I think for ease of record keeping, for clarity, that this amendment clarifies that it is employers whose businesses are located within unincorporated county. And employees are covered no matter where they're actually doing the work. Correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Right. Commissioner Quezada.
Madam Chair, okay. So if, so this stops employees or employers from getting out of the ordinance if they have their business in the unincorporated area but do their business within the city of Albuquerque. Is that what this is trying to do? I don't understand what this is really trying to do. I think that we passed an ordinance that goes across Bernalillo County, and that the only places that have to adhere by is if you have an address and a business license within Bernalillo County, you have to, the unincorporated parts of Bernalillo County, you have to adhere by what we've put forward. There's no loophole here, I don't think. So I'm just having a hard time kind of determining what one says and what the other one says or doesn't say. So I'm sorry, let me read this again.
So the question has come up, and it came up when we were voting on the minimum wage ordinance as well several years ago. Does this paid time off ordinance apply to individuals who are employed by these companies, or is it dependent upon where the person is actually working. So if someone were employed by a company in unincorporated Bernalillo County, was delivering a service, working on a project that is in city limits or somewhere else, that individual, the way it's not clear. Right now, the way this language, it would indicate that if the work is performed in the city of Albuquerque, it's not covered, which I think, we make a policy decision whether that is appropriate or not, but it also, I think, eliminates what is probably a paperwork nightmare for individuals trying to calculate paid time off depending on where the employee happens to be on a particular day. Right, by striking this language, it makes it clear that anybody employed by a business in unincorporated Bernalillo County is covered no matter where he or she is performing the service or working. I don't know, Hannah, is there anything else you can say to help clarify this?
Sure, Madam Chair. I think a good example would be a business that has a physical premise in the unincorporated part of the county, but sends employees to do work in the city. As currently drafted, my concern would be that perhaps when that person is doing work in the city limits that day, they, as currently drafted, might not be entitled to the benefit. We want to ensure that with this correction, that the employees of those employers in the physical limits of the unincorporated parts of the county would receive paid time off regardless of where they're doing work, whether it's in the incorporated or unincorporated portion of the county.
So, sorry, Madam Chair. So all this is doing is just reaffirming that if you have a business in Bernalillo County and in the unincorporated area, that no matter where you work, employees are able to accumulate whatever, depending on the size of the business, how many paid time off hours. I guess that doesn't really bother me that much as long as it's clarified. I would hate for there to be a loophole and say, well, they were working in the city, so they don't accumulate, paid time off. So, legally, this is the fix, right?
That is correct, Commissioner.
We won't have to bring this back next week or next month.
I sure hope not.
Okay. All right, because, I think we are doing something really great here for the community, and we have compromised in many different ways, both sides of this argument, from small businesses to medium-sized businesses to employees who deserve to earn paid time off. So I guess I don't have a whole lot of heartburn on this, unless any other commissioners may have something they want to speak on.
And I would just want to clarify that this is an amendment that was brought to me by county legal for clarification, because there have been questions about what exactly the intention is here. Right. Commissioner Talbert.
Sorry, Madam Chair, but so to clarify, this is brought forward by staff because they're worried that it's not solid enough to enforce through the unincorporated ordinance.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. That's it.
Commissioner Talbert.
Thank you. I apologize, I know we're going in a circle. So explain to me why we need to make this change, that it would not be enforceable the way it is today.
Commissioner Talbert, the concern is, as it's currently drafted, there would be a conflict with, maybe a conflict's not the right word, but if the employer is located in the physical premise of the unincorporated portion of the county, they're subject to this ordinance. However, by the definition of employee as it's currently drafted, it says that an employee is a person who performs the work within the unincorporated portions of the county. I can imagine a scenario where there's an employer who is located in the physical premises of the unincorporated parts of the county who sends employees to do work in the city. Those employees wouldn't be performing work in the unincorporated parts of the county and wouldn't fit under the definition of employee as currently drafted.
That's what I thought. So what we're doing now is we're now allowing individuals to work in the city, to have employers in the unincorporated area and accumulate paid time off. So we're now benefiting the city, the employer in the unincorporated county area, and the employees that just work in the county area are continuing to work in the county area. So we've just now broadened the entire spectrum of where they can work in order to get paid time off, which if we want to do that, that's fine, except that now we're doing the city's work, which is the city needs to determine their own ordinance of how they want to address paid time off. And we're in some way, we're giving an advantage to those workers who are working in the city with an employer in the unincorporated areas. And those workers that work in the city for a city business are not getting that type of benefit. So anyway, just something to consider.
Right, any other questions about this particular amendment? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to amend the definition of employee as previously read. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That passes on a 4-1 motion. All right, my next amendment is, again, something that I believe was in the original ordinance that we passed, and for some reason, I believe, dropped out. But this is language that Darren, I'll just read it. This is section 5. And I'm sorry, I don't have the line number, but this is notice to employees of paid time off requirements. And it reads, it would add a new section E. Any guidelines or rules promulgated by the county shall have the force and effect of law and may be relied on by employers, employees, and other parties to determine their rights and responsibilities under this ordinance. And I believe this is pretty standard language.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
All right, I move approval. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Piscotti.
Can you just, again, clarify, it sounds like it was in there and then it wasn't there and now it's being brought back. Do you have any idea of the history of this and what it means in English?
Yes, Commissioner Piscotti, and Madam Chair, I think that this amendment might want to wait depending on if there's a different amendment to the enforcement section. This is presently in the enforcement section as 4A7. However, if the enforcement section were to be amended, as I understand, the chair would like this to be included in section 5 as letter E.
All right, then with that explanation, I will withdraw this until we consider the change to section 4. With that, I will, I have another amendment to section 6, which is relationship to other requirements. And section 6, this amendment clarifies that the ordinance shall not be construed, the current language reads, this ordinance shall not be construed as creating or imposing any requirement in conflict with, nor to preempt or otherwise limit or affect the applicability of any other law, collective bargaining agreement, regulation requirement, or policy, comma, and the new language reads, including a collective bargaining agreements, grievance process, eligibility requirements, or accrual process. And this is language that, again, is greater clarification of it's this ordinance relationship to a collective bargaining agreement.
That's
Anything
correct.
you would add?
I think the intent, Madam Chair, is just to make sure we don't interfere in that relationship that exists. And so this language would hopefully ensure that that would be the case.
All right, so I move approval. Motion and a second. Any questions, comments? All right, we have a motion and a second for this amendment. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. And then my final amendment, and I want to just give a little bit of the history of this. So at the last commission meeting, when we considered this, we did have a conversation about enforcement. And as the ordinance is currently written, that does not define an enforcement process. And so following that conversation, I had asked county legal and planning and zoning or community services division to have a conversation about what the enforcement process, what enforcement process they would recommend. And so I'd like to ask Enrico Grotti, because he was one of the important voices in this conversation. just to explain, again, because this is an amendment that has been proposed, that was brought to me as, you know, in response to my question about what what enforcement process would the county staff believe best. And I think everybody has a copy of it, so, Mr. Grady, thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the Board of County Commissioners, so we looked at a couple of different options. Our concern from the perspective of the department that would have to implement this, take the complaint from the applicant or from the employee, notice the employer, create a process to extract records from the employer, schedule a hearing in front of a hearing officer, and move through that process. We had some questions about what the intent of the commission was and how that was to be set up. Was that supposed to be in a quasi-judicial manner, subject to appeal to the Board of County Commissioners? Because we do a lot of that kind of work for different types of code enforcement. And our question was, did you want us to kind of proceed along that same framework? So in thinking about this, I was trying to make sure that we had a process in place that would work, that would be effective, it would be efficient, it would be straightforward, and most of all, it would allow for compliance rather than be punitive or rather than be a very adversarial kind of relationship between the employer and the employee. Ultimately, those two have to work together at some point. So we also worked with legal to come up with another option that was more in line with a mediation that would be mandatory, that would seek to really resolve the issue between the employer and the employee, and seek to resolve it in a manner that would allow the employee to seek any paid time off that they were owed that they did not receive. And if that was not a viable option for them, they could move forward through a court process that would be initiated by the employee, and also allow for attorney's fees to be part of that equation. So that was the discussion we had, and it really came about out of a desire to try to resolve these cases when they came forward to us in a manner that was effective and was quick, and it would allow for those meetings to take place during non-work hours and so on. So that's kind of the direction that we proceeded on in looking at this other option.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess the only concern I have is that I know that you were sort of asked to do this. I just would hate to get sort of tied into something right now because you're really working through these processes. And so that's what would be my concern, quite frankly, about doing something like this and then like an amendment like this. And so I think that this requires a little more, thought. And, I know that you've looked at this, but so I would, recommend that we have more discussion about this, so, because we have some time, and just in terms of the best approach, or the approach that we feel all comfortable with, and because it's getting a little complicated. But so I will recommend a deferral at some point.
I will second that. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner
If there's a
Quezada.
deferral, then we'll discuss it later, Madam Chair.
Okay. And I think that's fine. I think perhaps with this deferral, I will just remove this amendment with the condition that there be some deadline set for finalizing what the process is going to be, because I think that, this is going to be going into effect in about 6 months, and there has to be adequate time to educate both employers and employees about what exactly that process is going to be. So during this conversation, what do you think is a reasonable time frame to come back to the commission? And again, it doesn't have to be written into the ordinance what exactly the process is. That would really be up to county staff. What do you think is a reasonable time frame for bringing forward a proposal?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think if we have adequate time to engage with the board, we could bring this back in January. And if we don't feel comfortable with it, then we can continue that. But I do think that we've got enough information together that we can share this and have hopefully a productive discussion. Certainly, if the commission wants more time, that's quite all right with us. One of our big concerns is that when this is adopted, we are going to be able to go out to the public, the business community, and all of the community and make sure that we have a very clear framework for how this ordinance operates.
So did you say January? So like 30 days?
That is correct.
End of January, 30, 90 days. Excellent. Commissioner Piscotti?
Thank you. Yeah, I would think at least end of January. But I was wondering if we could move to separate this issue out so that we can vote on the amendment to push this back to July, just so we know what time frame we're talking about right now.
I think that will be next. So we have a motion to defer, I think I would prefer just to withdraw my amendment and leave it up to the process. Ask the county staff to come forward with a proposal by the end of January. All right. That being done, I think that was the last of my amendments. Are there any other amendments?
Madam Chair, if I may, real quickly for the record, for Section 3, line item 9, it states 3 incremental increases per year. We need to remove per year because the following sentence is over 3 years. So that doesn't quite make sense.
All right. I would ask staff if you could please explain that amendment.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as Julianne Baca stated, it's line 13 on page 3 of the ordinance. The intent, I believe, this was Commissioner Piscotti and Commissioner Quesada's amendment a couple of meetings ago. The intent was to phase in the paid time off so that employers of different sizes would provide their employees certain amounts of paid time off. What it says right now is that there would be 3 incremental increases each year, but the intent was to do it over 3 different years. And so it's just removing that language to add some clarity.
All right, I will move that amendment. We have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And it looks, from what was published, there might be some amendments to Section 4, like 4A13, which has to do with, sorry, this would be page 4, line 13. Is that an amendment that was published? Do we need to amend that at the time of employment or the effective date of this law? Do we need to add that language?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if this is one of Commissioner Piscotti's amendments or not. I think we had intended on adding this language, and I'm sorry, I can't remember if it was a staff request or Commissioner Piscotti's, but to state that at the time that someone is hired or the effective date of this ordinance, because they may already be hired when this ordinance takes effect. So okay. At either time, the employer would need to provide notice.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Madam Chair, the amendment that I had passed, which was in conflict with the starting times, was just that we wanted to, as soon as possible, get folks to start to accrue paid time. And it's my understanding that's still part of the amendment, the language there. That was pretty much it, I think.
Okay, so this seems to be adding effective date of the law to the request for paid time off. So the point at which an employer educates the employee about his or her rights, and then the same language instructing the employee on the manner in which such notice for paid time off shall be given. And so that would be, again, page 4, line 13. I propose that we add or the effective date, so it reads at the time of employment or the effective date of this law, the employer shall instruct the employee on the manner in which this request shall be made. So I will move that amendment because I don't think it's in there.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, that is, I would say, just a clarifying amendment. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner O'Malley. Any questions about that? Commissioner
Yeah, I do. So I'm looking at it, I'm trying to find that line. So I'm not quite sure. Now, I know that from my recollection, the best of my recollection, that when Commissioner O'Malley's amendment was basically just that they start accumulating time on the day they're hired, but they can't, for a lack of a better word, cash in on it till they've been there 90 days. And if they're terminated or they quit before that, then they don't receive any benefits. They have to prove that they're a good employee and that they're committed to the business or the company, and hence the 90-day. So that's what we're keeping?
No, this doesn't affect that at all. So
Okay.
that remains unchanged. So this has to do with defining a request for earned paid time off. So this is the process through which an employer and employee communicate on a request. And so this is a pretty minor amendment. It's just, right now it reads, at the time of employment, the employer shall instruct the employee on the manner in which a request shall be made. It would clarify to say that at the time of employment or the effective date of this law, in case somebody is already employed by a company. So, Hannah, can you clarify that, please?
Absolutely, that's correct, Madam Chair. What this section talks about is how an employer has to give the employee notice about how the employee needs to let the employer know if they're going to be taking time off. As currently drafted without the amendment, it just says at the time of employment. What the amendment would do is say that someone might already be hired when this law takes effect. So at the time this law takes effect, that's when the employer needs to let the employee know the manner in which they can take the time off.
So it really doesn't affect when someone becomes eligible, what benefits a person is entitled to?
That's correct.
Okay, this is just clarifying, again, adding some language that would apply when someone is already employed when this is passed. So I move that amendment just to add the language to page 4, line 13. Any further clarification, questions? All right, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously, and I am going to propose an amendment to this, really the same, again, it's a clarifying amendment that would apply to individuals who are employed at the time of the passage of this law, so that would be page 4, line 22. Again, that defines when an employer shall instruct the employee on the way to do this. So I move that we add at the time of employment, comma, and the new language or the effective date of this law. So I move that amendment. We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Questions? Commissioner Piscotti.
To legal, can you just reiterate what Madam Chair just said? And is that equivalent to what we just wrangled over here with the legalese?
Commissioner Piscotti, there's section 4A, which is one way in which an employee might ask for time off. The employer will instruct the employee on the manner in which that request may be made. Section 4B is very similar, so it would be making the same amendment that we made in 4A. It would just be making it in 4B. It's just a different circumstance in which the employee would be requesting time off. We'd be asking the employer to notify at the time of employment or the effective date of the law the way in which the employer would like to be notified of their request.
Okay, so it's really equivalent wording, saying either the effective date or upon hire, basically.
Exactly.
And it doesn't change any of the content of what's going on with the ordinance.
That is correct. It just contemplates if the employer is already hired at the time that the law takes effect.
All right, and I just want to clarify, this was not something that I proposed. It was something that I see here in the version that was published, so I assume it came from legal as a recommendation.
That is correct. I believe that's correct, Madam Chair.
So we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have any other amendments? Don't you have amendments?
Okay, so we have to introduce the July 1st amendment. I introduce the July 1st amendment for approval.
Okay,
Thank you.
So I think what Commissioner Piscotti is moving is an amendment to page 8, line 25, that will read, "This ordinance shall take effect July 1st, 2020, which changes it from what it is currently written with January 1st. So that, all right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions about that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Any other amendments that legal has proposed that we should consider?
I don't believe so at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. So with that, I will move approval of ordinance 2019-32 as amended. We have a second? Second from Commissioner Quezada. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we are now on 10B. Finance, notice of intent to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of GO bonds.
Good evening,
Ms.
Commissioners. I'm Shirley Reagan, Deputy County Manager for Finance. The voters approved $38.7 million in GO bonds in the November 6, 2018 election. And in 2019, we sold $23.125 million of that election. We're coming before you today to sell an additional $8,375,000 in 2020. The property tax revenues projections are adequate to fund the sale of the GO bonds with no increase in the debt service tax rate. The interest earned on the bond proceeds will be allocated to the projects or bond debt service as specified in the ordinance and in the federal tax exemption certificate. We will come back and present an agenda for final adoption of the ordinance at the January 14th, 2020 administrative meeting. So tonight, we have a motion to approve the notice of intent to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of Bernalillo County, New Mexico General Obligation Bonds Series 2020 in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $8,375,000. I stand for questions.
All right, Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I move approval of the notice of intent. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are now on, thank you, Ms. Reagan. We are now on 10C, introduction of the 2015 International Fire Code.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so before you is a request to publish the International Fire Code 2015. It's moving us from 2009, which we're currently operating off of, and will bring consistency between ourselves and the city of Albuquerque. We also, in that action, are asking for a change to the ordinance, which is section 34, which basically does the same thing, just replaces the 2009 code with 2015 once approved 30 days from now.
We have a motion, and I will second that. This is for introduction and publication. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Quezada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What are the distinct differences? I'm sure that it's a lot, but could you summarize really quickly what those differences would be? Or is that, can you send that to my office and then we'll read it?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Quesada, I can't summarize it. What we will do is we will basically send a thumb drive to each of you. We have them prepared along with an introductory letter to allow you to kind of look at each of those. There are over 100 amendments probably inside.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry I don't have them memorized tonight. The big thing that we really did strive to do in this adoption, though, is to become a lot more business friendly. And we were kind of restrictive, I think, in what we were doing in the 2009 code. And a lot of that is due to where we were as a fire department and where we've come and our abilities. So you'll see that as you're reading through the code, that there are a lot of things that were far more restrictive on business than what are in there now.
And that was my concern, because a lot of unincorporated area where businesses are starting to go up or or in my district, and and just historically, before you were fire chief, actually, there was some difficulties with people, moving forward with business because we're looking at old codes and old regulations, and they were just really outdated. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. I appreciate the work. I know it's probably been oncoming for a while. I know you wear a lot of hats, Chief, but I appreciate the work. Thanks.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casada, thank you, and thank you to Fire Marshal Keith Clark, who put all of this together, and he's done a phenomenal job with his team, so credit goes to him. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And at this point, we're going to take a brief 15-minute recess, and we will be back at about 7:15. We are now on adoption of resolution, and we're going to start with the tiny home village construction that we took off the consent agenda. That was previously 9K. Madam Clerk, may I have a financial resolution number, please?
We're looking at 11A. Is that correct, ma'am?
No, it was 9K, so we took this
K,
off.
I thought we moved that.
We took it off the consent agenda, so now it's under adoption of resolution.
Okay, I'm going to need clarification. I'm sorry. I thought we had moved that down to 11J.
Right, well, we moved it to adoption of resolution. I'm just going to hear it first.
Okay, so that will be,
So that becomes 11A, and everything else moves down.
AR 2019-102.
All right. Tiny Home Village Construction Project.
Good evening, Chairman Sevens, members of the Commission. My name is Blaine Carter. I'm a professional engineer with the Bernalillo County Public Works Division, here to present this item. It is for the Tiny Home Village Construction Project. We have a couple different motions included in this item. The first is to authorize the county manager to award a contract for a materials purchase. It's basically for the SIPS panels that will be used to construct the tiny homes. The remaining items relate to funding appropriation for the project. It is for $750,000 from the Behavioral Health Initiative Gross Receipts Tax Fund to award to this project. That's the last bit of funding we need to get the general contractor authorized to begin. We're looking to start construction on this project in January 2020, so coming up here pretty quick. And these are some of the last remaining items we need to move forward on that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the materials purchase or the funding amount. I understand Margarita's here, Director of Behavioral Health, to speak to that item if you have any questions about that.
Commissioner Casada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I'd like to start with, I really like to commend Commissioner O'Malley and the partnerships that she's done to do this really great project. I think we should really celebrate her work with the unions. I'm a union member, and and to bring them into the community, because they've always asked, how do we help the community? How do we get involved in the community? And so I'd like to, shout out to, to our contractors union for getting involved in this. And then number two, I understood that it went through the steering committee. And I know that we did an emergency kind of steering committee because we're going through the processes and we're dedicated to the processes of behavioral health and how we spend that money. And the reason why I wanted to pull it off consent and talk about it a little bit, I was wondering if we could get some of the feedback from the steering committee. I did this today because I didn't get any feedback from the steering committee, so I don't know if you could, you could speak to that, or if Margarita could speak to the feedback. I know that they, all I know is that they, they approved and agreed that this was a great use of behavioral health funds. But I thought there might be some things that are some suggestions, and if we could hear those.
Sure. Madam Chair, Commissioner Quesada, we did call an emergency meeting on December 3rd of the Supportive Housing Committee. The Supportive Housing Committee met and reviewed a proposal that was drafted by the program manager, Bernadette Miera, related to the larger program and the specifics around the allocation of, or the specific fund request from the gross receipts, the behavioral health gross receipt tax. There were a couple of pieces that were recommendations from the committee. The first was related to the Tiny Home Village project being in line with the policies and procedures outlined in the Community Connections process, Community Connections program. And that will ensure that fair housing laws and things like that are in place on this site, and will need to be modified to fit this particular target population and this particular project, but there was a recommendation that there is a consensus and a collaboration around the Community Connections policies and procedures. There was also a request to ensure that all clients have clear care plans and clear exit plans as a function of the service delivery. There were some questions from the committee members around what happens if somebody, let's say there's a fight and somebody leaves has to leave the community, then what? Are they expected to fend for themselves or figure out what the next step is? But ensuring that there is a care plan and an exit plan outlined for every client. They requested that the allocation of $750,000 be changed to an up to $750,000. The reason for that was that in the proposal, there was an allocation for a contingency, and in the event that that contingency is not spent completely, those dollars would revert back to the gross receipts tax, and so changing it into an up to amount would allow for that flexibility. And there was a recommendation for ensuring collaboration with the Bernalillo County Housing Department for receipt of referrals, possibly maintenance of a wait list, but working with Bernalillo County Housing also as a strong partner in the larger program. The last piece was there was a recommendation to provide peer support trainings, to make peer support trainings available to the tenants. So while there is a component on kind of workforce development, but also opportunity for those tenants to also be peers and trained as peers. They particularly spoke to the guard or the security post that will be manned by the tenants, but having an ability for that tenant to also be a peer. So if something happened and someone needed to talk to a peer in the middle of the night, and that guard is the only staff that's on at that time, they have the ability to do some peer supports with the tenants. So those were the recommendations. As you did mention, there was a unanimous consensus that this should be approved and move forward. To be clear, it didn't go to the proposal itself didn't go to the steering committee. It went to the Supportive Housing Committee, but the steering committee was made aware last month in their previous meeting.
Okay. So thank you for that. I can't speak on this project. This is Commissioner O'Malley's project. I guess if some of those, asks, especially when you're talking about, the peer training and all these other things, I kind of have heartburn saying that up to $750,000 because if that's part of their ask for that, then we have to fund that, and that's not funded. And so if there's money left over, we would probably want to use that for those services and those and some of those suggestions. It's okay to have suggestions, but unfunded mandates is kind of that's a hard ask. So I don't know if Commissioner O'Malley wants to speak on any of those, but I appreciate you bringing those to us.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, just to be clear, these are all recommendations from the subcommittees. Again, it's not that these subcommittees are not government entities that can, make mandates, but these are recommendations and feedback from the committee.
Madam Chair, thank you. So, of course, we are looking at wraparound services for individuals who would qualify for housing in this village. That's going to be very, very important. Really, we're offering an opportunity for people, and I think that sometimes there's this feeling that people who are at risk or having issues in terms of homelessness, that somehow you can force people to do things, and you can't. It's just, you provide an opportunity, you provide all the services and the wraparound services, they can take advantage of it or they cannot. And I think that's important to realize too. We're looking at the gaps in services, we're looking at it from a holistic point, in fact, from the whole housing continuum, right? Transitional housing, site supportive housing, permanent housing. We're looking at all these because we're trying to figure out what the gaps are. But I also want to say that, and we'll probably be talking about this more, it's just really how really generous people have been in terms of wanting to partner with us, not only the Southwest Carpenters Union, but we've reached out to, for example, Home Builders Association of Central New Mexico, who, we're in discussion now about our ask was for them to provide the materials to build the interiors, shelving, et cetera. The schools have already committed to building them. Blaine has been working with the schools, ACES, and then we have a couple of other high schools, Valley being one, so that we can engage as many people in the community to participate in this and support this project. We've had really great support around the community in terms of where it's sited, churches, community, and neighborhood associations. So I think too that we have to realize this is a very high quality project. It's not, I think some people brought up, well, you can do this cheaper if you just put a tough shed up there. No, this is also, the community deserves a high quality project, and the individuals who will be living there deserve a high quality project too. So anyway, it's a pilot project too. We're going to do what we can to ensure its success, but I thought it was just really important to note that, this is a first sort of attempt to address part of the population. It's not going to, it's not going to be the, solution for everything. It just never is. There's all these pieces that have to come together. And I think we're all working on those pieces. One of the biggest issues, as we've recognized, is poverty. And the fact that, we have people who are really struggling, even if they are working, to find a home. So we've got a lot of work to do in that area. Anyway, I thank the Commission for their ongoing support. Thank you. Approval.
All right, I will second that. Do we need to vote on these as 3 separate items or all one?
They're all interrelated, so probably just as one would be best.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the tiny home village construction project. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are now on 11A. 11A, MDC vendor services and goods fees audit. Madam Clerk, may I have a resolution number, please?
AR 2019-103.
Okay. Can I just clarify what the FR for the tiny home village was? FR 2019? 102, okay. Thank you. All right. Ms. Cedia White.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I have also Roseanne Otero, Director of Operations at Metropolitan Detention Center. This proposed administrative resolution is a resolution directing staff to conduct an audit of MDC vendor services and goods and fees and report on findings. At the Metropolitan Detention Center, we have several contracts, for instance, commissary, we have inmate phone system, debit cards. So the Commission, this particular resolution is for staff to go in and give a detailed breakdown of all of the revenues that are either earned and or charged to the inmates, just to ensure that the prices that we are, and the fees that we do have set up are reasonable.
And we're here to answer any questions. The administrative resolution also states that staff will come back in May to report to the County Commission all of the detailed costs and fees by service. So I stand for any questions, or we stand for any questions.
Thank you. And I want to start by, so I'm the sponsor of this, and I'm going to move approval, but I want to make it clear that this is directing staff to look at fines and fees so that the commission knows what our inmates are being charged. And I want to make it clear that I believe that our Deputy County Manager, Lisa Cedillo-White, and Dinah, and everybody in our procurement department really does everything they can to make sure that the county is complying with procurement laws and doing everything they can to treat our inmates fairly. So I don't want this in any way to be a reflection on, I don't believe that there is anything punitive about these charges. I think it's important, though, that we don't know. And so when we put out a contract for telecommunications or the debit cards through which inmates get their money back, I think it's important that the commission knows who's paying for those, whether it comes out of our general fund money, whether some of the revenue is actually, there's revenue generated for the jail through those services. And so that's why this is just looking, asking staff to look at what the charges are, make sure that we understand. And again, I want to say the same about MDC staff, about Chief Hernandez and everybody at MDC. I do believe that you do the best, that you always have the interests, the safety, and the health of your inmates at heart. I think Angie Vecchio from PB&J came tonight to talk in favor of this, because if there are charges that make it difficult for people to afford making a phone call or a video visitation with their loved one, you know, that can affect the family relationship, particularly as it affects children. So there's been a lot of conversation about fines and fees in this community. A lot of what has been reported in the media is really beyond the jurisdiction of this commission, but this is one place where we can look at what we are doing. So I want to thank you for your help in putting this resolution together.
Welcome.
Right, so I'm going to move approval. AR 2019-103, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're on that now on 11B. May I have a resolution number, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. AR 2019-104.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Malley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to invite Barbara Baca. She's the at-large member of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, and she brought this unique place to my attention. As it turns out, it's basically on the very edge of my district. Right across the street is Quesada's, Commissioner Quesada's district, and you know, if he wants to speak to anything or if he has any concerns about the resolution. It's basically, we're looking at a cooperative planning initiative, and the name of it would be the Acequia Madre de Trisco Partnership. And Ms. Baca, if you would just explain a little bit about what this is about.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Malley, thank you very much. As I said in the public comment very briefly, but this Acequia Madre de Atrisco, it's also called the Atrisco Lateral in Conservancy talk, but it is the north of Central Avenue, west side of the river, and also it is where the Atrisco Acequia comes off, and it's the heading of that. So there is a very important waterway, but it's also a very historic location, and the ability to have really a partnership for planning and for education of our youth about the importance of our acequia system as the lifeblood of our valley. So it's several things come together. It's right across the river from the biopark, and the city has engaged in this project, and we'll be putting forward a companion resolution. Councilor Sanchez, possibly Councilor Pena. The MRGCD has put forward, and we adopted a resolution on Monday with seed money of $25,000 also. The county, if today this is approved, there's another match of $25,000, and the Water Utility Authority as well. So it's really a combination of agencies working together on a very important potential educational project planning, but really the commitment to protecting these important resources in the valley.
And Madam Chair, if I could continue, that area there, and it's really sad to see all these areas that are so historic and so important that a lot of times they just get trashed, they're ignored, whatever. This waterway, if you will, it's almost like the headwaters of another, maybe a town would look at headwaters in the same way. But the water moving through the ditch, I think it's always been something, you know, if you've anywhere close to the valley, just in the city, how much you appreciate. We have the Rio Grande, which is alive, it's a live river, and then to have the Acequia system, which we're losing little by little, which is unfortunate, but to really highlight those things and to make them, you know, a treasure, really, I think is really going to be important. That's our history, and unfortunately, as you know, this area has not, it's owned by the city, and then the MRGCD, of course, manages that section.
Right. There's city property as well as MRGCD property, and it's quite a lot if we put it all together and come up with a sort of overarching plan that all agencies are participating in. There's a real opportunity. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Casada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is one of the things that we've been working on. You know, we went out, and so what we're trying to do is we're organizing with state acequias, because all the acequias in New Mexico are extremely important, very cultural relevant, and to many communities throughout New Mexico. So we're putting, you know, an organization that's going to be community kind of run, community based. We're in the processes right now trying to find them a space where they can do their educational stuff, where they can promote the acequias, where we work on how we protect them. As a county commissioner, you know, I've put a lot of gates on a lot of our acequias to, you know, make them safe. They're not really places for ATVs. People are using them for illegal dumping. People are using them to steal from behind people's homes. And so we're putting another 70 gates in the South Valley, and we're working with the Middle Rio Grande and I think Amafka on some gate locations for public safety. So I think we all agree that that's very important to us. So thank you for the work. And we'll continue to grow stronger with acequias and organize in a stronger way and figure out how we get, you know, federal, state funding in order to continue to do the work of the people. So I just wanted to throw that out. That's very important to us in the South Valley. So thank you.
And if I may, Madam Chair and Commissioner Casada, thank you very much for all of your work. I've neglected to mention the South Valley Regional Association of Acequias is behind this, as well as CESOS, which is the group you mentioned about educating the community about acequias. And we have two members of the South Valley Association here today, and they have successfully gone to the State Historic Preservation Office for a monument for the Atrisco acequia that will be located somewhere in this location. So we are trying to get more attention and important attention to a very old historic system that sometimes is overlooked. So thank you.
Thank you, and I also appreciate the work of Commissioner Casada with the acequias because we basically wanted to approach it from a county-wide aspect. We do have some acequia associations in the North Valley, though, you know, they're not as organized as South Valley. And it's just because we've seen this sort of disappearing. Unfortunately, a lot of the ditches or the acequias have been covered up and because of development and that sort of thing. At one time, of course, there was huge agricultural areas, and they've been changing out. So that's kind of sad to see. I think another important thing is just how to encourage wildlife back into the system. Because quite frankly, I remember the acequias being with, you know, minnows and frogs and everything, and because I have an acequia, and I'm like, there's not a lot to be seen anymore. And I'm not sure if that's just pollution or what it is, but it's very disappointing. So whatever we can do to improve the environment for wildlife in the acequia system, that would be good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you want to move approval?
Oh, sorry. I'd like to move approval.
All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we're now on 11C, the CARE Campus renovation. May I have a financial resolution number, please?
Yes, ma'am. FR 2019-105.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the item before you is looking to appropriate $4 million one-time dollars from the Behavioral Health Gross Receipts Tax. This is in order to fund a portion of the renovation on the CARE campus. About 3 years ago, a master plan was conducted for the then MATS campus in order to expand and provide additional services. Since then, Turquoise Lodge Hospital, who was a previous tenant, has vacated, and we needed to revisit that conversation. So working with Lisa Manuel and her team, we were able to revisit the master plan and have a brand new master plan, and that includes a number of additional levels of service that will be provided on the MATS campus. The renovation in total will be roughly about $10 million. However, we do have deferred revenue from grants where capital was were authorized for capital allocations, and in that, the shortfall for the capital renovations on the campus is in the amount of just under $4 million. The particular area that this funding will cover is in order to add an outpatient clinic on the campus. We know that there is a significant gap in the area for outpatient behavioral health services. So this will be an outpatient behavioral health services where not only current clients of the CARE campus can access services, as many of them do not have an outpatient provider and they see us as their provider, but also the larger community. Months past, Secretary Hotram Lopez was in conversations even with the base, with Sandia Labs and other locations who are looking for outpatient behavioral health providers in the area in order to meet the needs, and this would be also a possibility for those other providers. We'll be working with the University of New Mexico Hospital to also be able to operate the behavioral health outpatient clinic, and we absolutely are intending to do induction and maintenance of Suboxone out of that site as well. The other half of that is to be able to provide a drop-in or a living room model where people could drop in on a daily basis and access peer-based services, including groups and one-on-one peer counseling and services. So all of you have been to our campus, but this will completely gut the entire admin area in order to provide these services. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none? Please go ahead. Commissioner Piscotti.
I'm going to approve this, but I just have a question. It sounds like you're looking at having different streams of revenue too, because if it's an outpatient clinic and you get clients from like Sandia, they have private insurance, plus you'll take Medicaid and people who are uninsured. So it'll hopefully, bring in money.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, that is correct, and that's part of why we want to work with the University of New Mexico Hospital. They are currently a provider on our campus and are currently billing Medicaid for the services that are allowable. And so we absolutely will maximize those funding sources in order to fund operations in that space.
And so if you work with the UNM, the medical group, they'll credential so they can also take private insurance.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, that's correct. That is the plan.
Thank you. So I think this is a great move for the county. I know that there's been conversations for a long time about providing a wider range of services out of METS, particularly medically based services. So I thank you for bringing this forward. I thank you for all the work on this. One question though, so the outpatient clinic will be able to provide Suboxone induction and maintenance. Will you have to wait for this to be completed in order to do that?
Madam Chair, there is a multi-phased approach to our induction and maintenance on our campus. Our current service provision on our campus is, as you know, detox, crisis stabilization, and our public inebriate program. In the next 3 months, we are planning to begin Suboxone induction in detox. So that will happen in the very near future. However, as a function of that plan, we are referring to outside outpatient clinics because we don't necessarily have the capacity to receive those clients back in order to facilitate their maintenance. And so this outpatient clinic will answer that as well. So we will begin induction in detox and establish a referral for maintenance with First Choice or First Nations or other providers in the community like Centro Savila, or I'm sorry, Casa de Salud. But once we have an outpatient clinic on site, if that is closer and more readily accessible to our clients, we can refer them as well.
That's great. I'm very happy to hear that. And the renovations you expect to be complete in 18 months? Is that the time frame?
Madam Chair, if this is approved, this will officially flip the switch for Lisa Manuel and her team to really start moving the process. We will have a number of pieces that will need to be put in place. We are renovating, we're beginning our first phase of renovations to one of the existing wings in order to accommodate a detox wing there. And the expectation is as soon as that gets up and moving, a second bid potentially could be released for this. We do believe that, I think, 18 months is feasible? I'm looking at Lisa. So that
Great. Well, thank you again. This is a great step forward. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk, may we have a financial resolution number for 11D?
I'm sorry, FR 2019-106.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the second item before you is related to a behavioral health client management system. For many years, the Department of Behavioral Health Services and the CARE campus have been exclusively collecting data and doing quasi-client management through an SQL system. This system is extremely outdated. It's barely meeting our needs, and we're in fear on the daily that there will be a crash or major issues with our system. Even worse than that, our resource reentry center that we have is operating under SharePoint, which is absolutely not built for what we're doing in the RRC. This item is in order to allocate funding from the gross receipts tax in order to support or fund the BHI subcommittee proposal for a client management system. Again, this will be a one-time allocation of $500,000 and then recurring up to $200,000 annually. Now, the important piece that's really, I think, critical and has been asked numerous times in the community is how can our providers also tap into this system? So the hope is that this system will be able to merge and receive data clearly with other providers in the BHI. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Will this allow for program evaluation?
Madam Chair, it will absolutely.
I move approval. Second. We have a motion second. Any other questions? We have motion second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously. We're on 11E.
You waiting on me?
Oh, sorry. I guess so. We have a financial resolution number for 11E, please.
Yes, ma'am. FR 2019-107.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, you all have seen this item a couple of times before you. This is for the capital or startup or funding to increase and expand the behavioral health continuum. This is an open RFP that we currently have. To date, there have been 125 RFP downloads and 165 pre-proposal attendees. I want to say the greatest attendance I've ever had in an RFP has been about 12 to 20 people. And we had 165 people in our pre-proposal most recently. There has been significant interest from the community on this topic, and this is looking for an allocation of $4 million to this particular project. This will create a total amount for the project in the amount of $10 million. These are one-time dollars spread over the 3-year time frame. That I'll stand for questions.
All right. I move approval. We have a motion and second. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Piscotti.
I'm just curious why the raise at this time up to the $10 million?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, we have seen a significant interest from the community in this item. We believe that there are a number of projects that could potentially be seeking large amounts, particularly because we also are including the capital component in this. And this will allow us to have a greater reach in the community and fund more programs. We often, under RFP review, receive multiple proposals that are great, and we end up having to, we don't have the ability to fund those that we still think are amazing, but they just don't quite get to that pace because we have a limited funding amount. This will allow an up to amount. It doesn't mean that the full 10 million will be allocated if there's not 10 million worth of proposals to fund, but this will give the flexibility from those parked one-time dollars in order to have that flexibility to fund a greater amount of programs.
Okay. It sounds like you're seeing a lot of good stuff come in.
Yeah, I think we're really excited because we've heard a ton of feedback. We haven't seen any proposals yet. Right now, the deadline is December 20th. There is an expectation that that deadline will be increased since we are increasing the funding amount. But we expect that our review committee will be quite busy for about a month at least.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously. We're now on 11F, New Mexico Association of Counties 2020 Legislative Policy Priorities. Mr. Campbell.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Cleve Campbell. I'm the Chief of Staff to Bernalillo County Manager Julie Marcus Baca. And this agenda item tonight is an annual item where the New Mexico Counties Association asks all counties in New Mexico to adopt the resolutions for the state legislative session that's coming up in January. And this year, they have legislative priorities revolving around some HB2 appropriations that are all very county-friendly in terms of the Detention Reimbursement Fund, prisoner transport and extradition, having a line item to reimburse sheriff's departments for that. Also, some money for EMS funding, increasing the distributions from the Law Enforcement Protection Fund, also some funding for behavioral health to approach juvenile offenders, and then lastly, addressing para-solvency. So you have a resolution in your packet that they provided us. Their para wording was a little bit different than ours, so we took the liberty of adding our para language, which is in the next agenda item, to the New Mexico County's resolution for consistency's sake from Bernalillo County. With that, I stand for questions.
Commissioners, any questions, comments? All right, I move approval. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now on Bernalillo County's legislative policy priorities.
Good evening again.
Oh, you know, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask for an administrative resolution number.
AR 2019-108.
Okay, so we have duly passed AR 2019-108. May I have a resolution number for the next item?
AR 2019-109.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. So again, we also, Bernalillo County submits an annual resolution to clarify what our legislative policy priorities are. And this year, it's similar to last year, and we're trying to build on progress made last year. Generally speaking, the categories of items in the resolution revolve around protecting county revenues, para-reform, criminal justice coordinating councils, and trying to get funding for implementation and data sharing integration. Also, a whole suite of items around behavioral health that really revolve around providers, licensure, reciprocity, debt forgiveness so that we have more providers in the state, which we've learned from behavioral health is a critical shortage in New Mexico. Also things like school-based health centers, food insecurity services for youth leaving foster care. There's a whole range of legislation that would be really advantageous for the state and Bernalillo County if it was passed. So that's a quick summary. We did have a lot of good input from departments, from legislators. We had help from our lobbyists, Dan Weeks and Jason Weeks. And we're very pleased with how things have come together, and I stand for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? All right, seeing none, I move approval of AR 2019-109. We have a second from Commissioner Piscotti. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Clay, for your work on this, and everybody on the county staff.
Thank you.
All right, we're now on 11H. May we have a financial resolution number, please?
FR 2019-110.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Debbie Joel Maguette, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here to ask for a motion for appropriation of $1 million from the general fund balance and a financial resolution for the Mesa del Sol Regional Sports Complex. John Barney, Planning Manager, will provide additional details to the project if there's any questions.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. John Barney, Planning Manager for Parks and Recreation. Let's see. Did all of you get a copy of the brochure earlier this evening from Jim and Bob from the Sports Commission? So basically, this funding will be used for Phase 2. It will be also added to additional funding that's being requested from the state legislature during the capital outlay legislative session in January. So basically, it's going to be to do these fields here. That will provide the county in this particular sports complex with an additional 10 fields that will be tournament level fields, and they're going to be fields that will really help us to serve our communities in Southwest and Southeast, which are, as you know, there's a Bernalillo County Soccer Complex, which is all the way up in Northwest, but some of our folks in other parts of the community, this will really help to serve and give them the competitive opportunities that many of them don't have at this point. So this is why we're very excited about getting this done. And then with that, I stand for questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Comments? I think before we vote, I would just like to recognize the incredible work of both of our staff, but also our Youth Sports Commission in putting this together. They have we've had the commission now since 2014. I think there are 19 members, and they have worked really hard to identify what young athletes in this community need. And this was long ago identified as a priority, and so they have put a lot of work into this. So I want to first thank them for that and move approval. Second. All right. Any questions? Right. Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So the next item is appropriation of $1.5 million for the Mid-North Valley Agro-Recreation Complex at the Sandia Ranch, Phase 1 and 2. And again, that's also for approval for a financial resolution of 1.5 from unassigned fund balance from the general fund. The project itself is, we've had a couple years we've been meeting with the citizens in the area about relocating some of the functions of the NMSU Cooperative Extension, a covered arena type of different offices for maybe the youth, Grow the Growers, those type of projects that we want to do there at the community center. Lastly, we've had 3 public meetings that have a possibility of a school. That has not been a decision, that has not been made, but those have been discussed, and that is something that still needs to be determined. The process will be followed with that. So with that, I stand with, for additional questions.
Any questions?
You want a number?
Actually, Madam Clerk, may I have a financial resolution number, please?
FR 2019-111.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Malley.
Madam Chair, I move approval unless there's any questions.
Second. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we are now on approvals, and we are first going to hear the item that was pulled off the consent agenda. That was item 9D. That is the naming of the Bernalillo County Courthouse. Madam County Manager.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so what you have before you is the naming of the Bernalillo County Courthouse to the to Charles W. Daniels, 2nd Judicial District Courthouse. And as many of us all know, Justice Daniels had a very long and distinguished career in the legal community and also as an attorney, but also as a Supreme Court justice. He also served as Chief Justice from 2010 to 2012 and 2016 to 2017. And I have Tia here with me, who is the chairman of the naming committee, who can talk a little bit more about the process.
Madam Chair, Commission, board members, the naming committee's responsibility is to vet proposals that come to the naming committee and make a recommendation to the commission regarding the proposal. In this case, the naming committee's recommendation is for the board to consider naming a particular room or a special area inside the courthouse after the late Justice Charles Daniels, and not the entire courthouse. As an example, the naming committee has learned that there is currently a new unnamed, unassigned courtroom that's under construction in the courthouse, and that could be a suitable possibility for consideration. Some of the reasons or discussion points that the naming committee discussed in determining what its recommendation would be, there are 3 points that I will share with you. Cost was a primary concern, or something that, an item that the naming committee discussed. If the board were to consider going with this new courtroom in the courthouse that has not been assigned to a judge, that construction cost is already included in the budget. Whereas if the board decided to name the entire Second Judicial District Courthouse, the estimated cost would be about $11,000, which would be additional funding that would be needed in order to accomplish that. Two other points that the naming committee considered before deciding on its recommendation. The second point would be that, as you heard from the county manager, Justice Daniels made a tremendous contribution to the legal community. However, he did not serve on the bench in the Second Judicial District Court. And thirdly, the naming committee also felt like there may be other judges who are possibly worthy of this honor and could be considered as well. So those are the points that, the points of discussion as the naming committee decided on its recommendation. I'll stand for questions if you have them.
All right. Commissioner Piscotti.
And so what we're voting on tonight is to name the courtroom after him, or the entire courthouse?
Well, the proposal was to name the entire courthouse after Charles Daniels.
But it sounds like the naming committee recommended only that one courtroom.
The courtroom or another space inside the courthouse, possibly, but something worthy of being named after the justice, but not the entire courthouse. That's the naming committee's recommendation.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, one of the things that I failed to mention is I know that Commissioner Hart-Stebbins, our chairwoman, had met with the Chief Judge, Stan Whitaker, and he apologizes he couldn't be here, but he wanted to relay that, he was in favor of doing so. So probably something important for you all to know.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Justice Daniels, he's sort of, there were so many people who knew him, not necessarily in capacity of the justice, but he was well-known throughout the community, and I have heard nothing but positive things about him and the effect that he had on people. It was so positive, and they remember him. I certainly would hope that we would honor him in this way, in some way.
I've got a question. So was anybody on the naming committee a lawyer, familiar with Justice Daniels' work, familiar with his work as a Supreme Court justice, or the impact he has had on actually Bernalillo County government? I mean, I'm interested in the statement that there are other judges who might be equally deserving of this honor, and I'm wondering, were there specific names, were there specific accomplishments that were raised by the naming committee?
There weren't any particular, Madam Chair, Commissioners, there were not any particular names that were put forward to offer as a consideration to the board. Probably some research would need to be done, and I think the committee felt like maybe some research could be done, and maybe there would be other judges that might also be considered for this honor.
So I did propose this to actually name the courthouse, not a courtroom, because I think there are few people in the legal community who rise to the level of importance that Justice Daniels did. I think, he passed recently, and I think the support for him and the recognition of his accomplishments was uniform, bipartisan. I think judges, individuals, everybody in the criminal justice system were uniformly appreciative of the work that he had done. I think that there probably are few judges. There are a lot of amazing judges in this community, but when you look at his advocacy for free speech, for equal justice, his work on solving the crisis in the guardianship system, his work on solving the log jam in the Section Judicial District, which had an impact on our jail, an impact on public safety in terms of access to speedy justice. I think he really rises above certainly anyone that I can think of in this community. When he passed, there were all kinds of articles written about him that revealed a lot of information that many of us had never known. About his start in Arkansas, I think it was. His family, they were sharecroppers. None of them had even gone to high school. And he was an Air Force veteran, was, as Justice Nakamura said, a titan in New Mexico's criminal justice, just in the judiciary. I think what she said was his pretrial advocacy led to one of the most significant justice reforms in New Mexico history. And that's from one of his colleagues on the Supreme Court. So I do respect the naming committee's recommendation. I think $11,000 given our budget is not a lot, given the fact that some of these reforms proposed by Justice Daniels, the case management order, for example, that really did lead to expediting criminal cases, solve the overcrowding situation at our jail, allowed people speedy access to justice, which is what we are supposedly all about. That's saving us $10 million a year. I mean, some of us go back to the time when we were sending inmates out of county to the tune of about $70,000 a day. So I do want to move forward. Again, it is the decision of this commission, but I think for the naming committee to say that there are others who are equal, I don't agree with that, and that is why I have moved this forward. I think there were individuals who would have come. Justice Whitaker did reach out to me and make it clear that the Second Judicial District, the judges did support this, and I think had it not been on consent, we would have heard more about Justice Daniels' legacy in this community. And certainly as we as county commissioners think about the concepts of fairness and equal access to justice, we have to recognize what an enormous influence he was in the state of New Mexico. So anyway, again, I'm going to move my original proposal, which is to name the courthouse as opposed to just an individual courtroom. But we need a second, and yes, Commissioner Quezada.
Thank you for that background. You know, I respect that work. I mean, who wouldn't? I just don't know enough about any other people that have, you know, and I'm sure there is. I mean, I don't think none of us ever stand alone on the work that has been done in the community. And I don't want to disrespect this man tonight. I really don't. And I don't feel that if we decide, you know, to name a courtroom after him, are we doing him a disjustice? You know, so that's a hard kind of pill to swallow. Although I think a courtroom does honor somebody who worked and spent his life, you know, doing great things in a courtroom. I just don't know enough, and I would like to know more about other judges. Now that I know about that judge, I would really like to see if he was the cream of the crop. And I just don't know that, and I don't want to be disrespectful to him at all. I agree that you're doing something great and it sounds like he's a super great human being and a leader in our community. I would want to make sure that what we put on a building forever, that we're all kind of in agreement with. That way it's a little stronger instead of us saying, well, I guess, or I'm not quite sure. I think that kind of weakens it. And I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that to him or anybody else, because I just have a feeling that once we leave this room, my phone's going to blow up saying, well, what about him? What about that? What about that? I think if we're going to make that process happen, you know, the steering committee, yeah, okay, whatever, you know. Yeah. I almost like said, well, you know, or another space in the courthouse, which I totally found that disrespectful, in my opinion, you know, whether it's say in a closet or, you know, I don't get that. And so I want to make sure that we do this with honor and we do it through our process and not the steering committee's process, and that we're all confident in that. And if he's the cream of the crop, then definitely he'll end up being that. And you made a really great argument for him just now. And if it wasn't for that, there might be some other people in the community that stand there with him. And maybe we say, okay, great, we do the building over him, and then these other people who we think are great, we can name the courtroom after him, and then maybe, you know, some other things as we move forward. I'd like to put a list together maybe, if that would be okay with you. And that way we do it right, and we do it with you know, 100%. I want this to have 100% awesome support and not kind of, well, I guess kind of support is my comment. Commissioner
Talbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner O'Malley. I saw we both went in at the same time. Appreciate that. Just so everyone understands, you know, I wanted this off the consent agenda because we put a process in place for naming buildings. We added the naming committee, and we've taken our time on most cases and actually taken extended periods of time to name other things throughout the county, and it's worked, and it's been 100% at the end, and we've all felt good about it. I feel the same way. I want to make sure we're not just going forward with something. I don't know him nearly as well as Commissioner Stebbins does. I've heard of his work, and I know that he's amazing, and I think at the end of the day, we'll probably end up doing something. I just wanted to follow forward with the process and not just put it through without having a discussion, and I think that's important, and that's what we've said in the past with other naming situations, going back and forth, and I'm pretty sure we haven't named one building just through a consent item. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. And again, if everyone decides tonight to say yes, then that's fine. But I do agree with Commissioner Quesada, something as big as this and honoring someone as important as Justice Daniels, I think should be done with a little more time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'd like to ask, when was this first proposed? So this has been under consideration for 2 months?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think it maybe a couple of months ago, Madam
3
Chair,
months.
you brought it to our attention, and you said you wanted to hold off for a while and speak with the family members before bringing this forward. And so probably maybe a month or so ago, it resurfaced. And part of the process for vetting, part of the vetting process is to ask the community to provide public comment on any naming proposals that we have. And so for the past 30 days or so, this item has been before the community, and we've been soliciting public comment. And so that's part of the process.
So it seems it was going to be on an earlier agenda, but we didn't have 30 days for the public comment. So I think it had been proposed for our last meeting in November. And then, so it had been before the committee at least, or it had been sent to the committee at least 6-8 weeks before that, correct? I mean, and I'll just ask the county manager, because you and I had this conversation about when, what I'm saying, this is our process. And we did establish the naming committee several years ago, but this is our process, and I think it has been open to all of us for at least 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe, for giving us an opportunity to look at both Justice Daniels' records or record of accomplishment, and also think about other ideas, other individuals who might be eligible for this or appropriate for this.
So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mary Murnane, Fleet and Facilities Department. By virtue of my position, I'm a member on the naming committee, and I just wanted to make a clarification. There wasn't a suggestion that there be someone else nominated. It was more that this, if we change the name of this building, what would be super disrespectful would be to come in later and have it be changed again after someone else. And so it was more an issue of, is this a decision that we want to make at this time with respect to the entire building? And if it's the commission's will that yes, that is, then that's, you know, that's fine. It was obviously it's fine. It was a concern about if we name this building after Justice Daniels, then in 20 years from now, if there's someone who does even more amazing things, what is that a concern or not? So that was it wasn't a discussion of who else could the building be named after. It was more going forward.
So is there a chance that we would say rename the Swede Shoulder Complex? I mean, was that a concern? I was on this commission when that proposal was made. I don't recall any conversation about whether there were other athletes or coaches or prominent individuals in the community, whether that conversation was being had by the naming committee. This was a proposal by Commissioner De La Cruz to name the Mesa del Sol Sports Complex, the Swede Shoulder Complex.
So I can't speak to that. I don't know. My involvement in the naming committee has been since I've been the department director for Fleet and Facilities. And I don't know, similar to the Steve Schiff building, when it was built, it was named. The involvement I've had in the naming committee has typically been when we're wanting to say name a fire station or name an existing building after someone. So I can't speak to the complex, because I don't recall.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I don't recall that particular proposal. I think the naming committee has been in existence for about 10 years. I don't know when that name was changed.
It was during my tenure on this board, so it was within the last 10 years. Yeah. And you know, I understand the concern. There may be other individuals who might rise to this honor. I do want to make it clear we did follow the process. This has been out for both public consumption and commission input for quite some time. It wasn't introduced just a month ago. I want to make that clear.
Madam Chair, just to be clear on when you asked me on September 4th. So it's been a few months.
Thank you. So, anyway, you know, Commissioner,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Piscotti, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm not hearing that we really do want to like dig in and see if there's anybody else more worthy or come with a list. I think that, myself included, you know, I've heard of Judge Daniels, but I don't really know him that well either. And I think to Commissioner Quesada's point, and I think your point too, I think you mentioned like when we do this, we want to be wholeheartedly about this is like a really great thing that we did. And it seems like there's no downside to, you know, waiting until the next meeting. There's no issue in waiting. Is there any urgency to doing it tonight?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Piscotti, I am not aware of any urgency.
Commissioner Quezada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some heartburn. Well, just because, you know, and I guess it's my own fault that I you know, this wasn't something on our radar through my office. And you know, I'm just a little concerned that the committee itself didn't say, oh, wow, we're gonna name this building. That's a great idea. Maybe at our job as a steering committee to say, you know, maybe we should submit some names, we should go over them and look at them, and then we would have felt that they would have done that process that we now have to do. It didn't seem like they did that process, in my opinion, just because it's such a big, huge building in the middle of our community that needs to be done, I think, with, you know, with some great due process and with great pride when we do decide to go. And I would love to cut that ribbon and say, look, we did something great. We're honoring a great human being, whoever that may be. And if it's Judge Daniels, then that's awesome. And so I would like to ask for the 30 days so I can get some input from the community. And then I would love to do some research on Judge Daniels, because he sounds like a really great New Mexican to me.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Madam Chair, and, you know, I think that, you know, of course, I didn't actually, I don't think, meet Judge Daniels. I know of Judge Daniels. He was, of course, the Chief Justice. He was an extraordinary individual, not only as a judge, but as an attorney and just as a community member. I think he's absolutely worthy of, you know, naming the courthouse after him. But I don't want this to fail. I think there's going to be, you know, obviously the conversation where people don't feel comfortable moving forward at this time. So, Madam Chair, you know, that's up to you, but I think it probably makes sense to look at a deferral. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner O'Malley, I am comfortable with that. I do want everybody to be comfortable with this. I would ask, you know, we do have a process. It's not like we haven't given this due process. It isn't as if there hasn't been adequate public input. If people have not availed themselves of that opportunity, I think that we should. And I would just ask when we bring this back in a month that if there are other ideas, bring them forward. If you have questions, concerns about Justice Daniels or anything he did, but I do think that it is important that we recognize what he has done, not just for this county, but for this state and the people that we are all elected to serve. So Commissioner O'Malley wants to move for a deferral.
I would move a deferral to the next commission.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye. That passes unanimously. All right, we are now on, let me see. 12A, concurrence of Deputy County Manager for Public Safety.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, As you all know, Greg Pettis has been serving as Deputy County Manager for Public Safety for quite some time, the interim, with an interim title. And I apologize, we probably should have brought this to you a long time ago, but then what we did is we combined the fire chief position and the DCM for public safety. And it was a cost savings, but it was also because he has the ability to perform both and has done an exceptional job. And so I am respectfully requesting concurrence of this.
All right, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously. We're now on B, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm Pamela Moon, Director of Accounting and Budget. We're here tonight to ask you to accept a motion to accept the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. This report was presented to our Audit Committee on November 8th, and it also has been presented to the New Mexico Office of State Auditors, and they released it, gave us the okay to release on December 3rd. One of the requirements is that our auditors present to you a brief summary of this report. So tonight I have Raul Anaya and Ryan Jones with CLA, and they will be here to present.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Raul Anaya, and I'm a audit principal with CLA. We had the pleasure of conducting the audit for Bernalillo County for the year ended June 30th, 2019, and we, throughout our test work, had no difficulties in conducting that audit, conducted the audit on time, and throughout that audit only identified 2 minor items that we were required to bring to your attention under the guidance of the Office of State Auditor. Overall, we issued an unmodified clean opinion, which is the highest opinion that an auditor can give on a financial statement. Ryan Jones, who was the audit manager, will go over the brief exceptions that we did have.
Hi, this is Ryan Jones with CLA, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Before I get into the discussion of the findings, I just wanted to point out that we had a very good working relationship with the County Finance Department. You have some really great individuals in that department. They're passionate about doing their work. They're passionate about doing the right thing, and they work hard to push that message down to those who work with them. So I just wanted to point that out and say thank you. As Raul mentioned, I wanted to talk about two audit findings that we did have. I do want to point out that these are neither material weaknesses nor significant deficiencies, so we don't have a concern that these issues would have any sort of impact on the financial statements themselves. It doesn't impact the numbers, anything like that. So the first one, 2019-001, this is in regards to the disaster recovery plan. And while a disaster recovery plan is in place, it's not part of a broader overall business continuity plan. And that's not to say that the individuals in place would not be capable of responding to some sort of natural disaster, something terrible that happens that shuts down businesses. It's just that process and the procedures is not documented. So our recommendation to the county was to work on developing documentation in regards to that, and I believe that IT management did concur. Our second finding was in regards to security monitoring. This is 2019-002, and so the county does not have a documented security monitoring process in place. So what happens at the county, any business, any entity, any governmental entity across the United States, each day there's penetration attempts, there's hackers out there trying to steal information. So the county does keep logs of that, and the county does respond to those and performs investigations as needed. Again, similar to the previous finding, our recommendation was in regards to actually documenting that, what specific steps, what priorities are in place to address those issues as they arise. And And that was it. There was one prior year finding that was in regards to cash receipts not being deposited timely. I did want to point out that that was resolved in the current year. So under current state law, state governments have 24 hours after the receipt of cash to deposit that cash into a bank. And this is something we run across a lot with our state and local clients, where you might have a place that collects cash, and just due to location, weather, limited staffing, an illness, something like that, that money actually, maybe doesn't get deposited, until the next day, so or the day after. So there was one exception out of 20 that we tested, and we did the same test this year, and we didn't identify any deficiencies there. So with that, do we have any questions?
Commissioner Talbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the cash handling, do we use a courier to take our cash to the bank, or do we have a runner, or how do we get cash into the banks within that 24 hours?
Yes, Commissioner Talbert, we have a variety of methods that we can do with cash handling. We can do the electronic deposit, or we can, like our big cash has a courier. They have an armored car courier. Some of our smaller departments drop it off at the bank themselves. Okay. So we have a variety in our policy, in our administrative instruction.
Highest and best use method in order to get the money into the bank quickly. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions, I move approval. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we have deferred item 12C. We are now on 12D, the Route 66 Visitor Center construction funding. Who's presenting this?
Good evening, Madam Chairs and Commissioners. My name is Rodrigo Eichwald. I'm the engineer that's in charge of the Bernalillo County Route 66 Visitor Center. And I'm here to ask for us to reserve $1.5 million from the general fund to support the construction of the Route 66 Visitor Center. As you all know, we are creating a visitor center on the west side that has a lot of amenities for the community, including a meeting space, exhibit space, tap room, several outdoor amphitheater. This project is a joint project with the city, and currently the estimate for construction is $12 million. We currently have $7.3 million. We are also seeking money from the city at an amount of also 1.5, and from the state at $3 million. With that, I stand for questions.
Commissioner Quezada?
So just from my understanding, I believe the city has allocated $1 million at the last meeting that I saw. They didn't allocate the 1.5. He basically, I've talked about this many different times. I think we're doing a really good thing for the community. I think, we have a really good idea on really helping West Central and how it develops. And so again, I just ask for your support. And I'd also like to thank Commissioner O'Malley for her support in this project. I think there's some misconception out there that she hasn't supported this project, and she has, and I think it all kind of, I kind of just stated what our mission was on the op-ed for the Journal, and I think, we stand by that. We stand by that, that community involvement and community engagement, and this is basically, we're just asking to allocate it until the market analysis is in. And just so it's earmarked, so we don't slow down the process. As Commissioner O'Malley knows with their tiny home village project, that every time we wait, the price goes up. And so, time is of the essence. So thank you.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Yeah, and I'm supportive of the earmark. we did move forward and unanimously to look at a market study. The market study is not focused on the entire facility. It's really focused on those particular uses that would require some private investment. And by all accounts, it's a beautiful facility. I think it's important that we make sure that we do high-quality projects. The county does in communities. It's a big investment. So I didn't know if you wanted to move approval, and I'll second it.
I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So I have a question. What is the status of the report that was approved by the commission a couple of months ago?
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that it will be available by around the next commission meeting. And then we will be given the report, have a chance to review it, et cetera, just to see what, the idea, of course, is to inform us as to what the challenges may be. The important thing is and I've always put this forward, that we want to make sure that it's a successful project. So what does that, what does it need to be successful? If we need to look at supporting the organization that's, got the contract for it, or whatever we need to do. And I do not know what the outcome will be of the study. The only thing that the contractor went on was the resolution itself. And I don't know if you want to speak to this, Maylene. Her Economic Development Department is the one who I think reached out to get the contractor.
Madam Chair, I'm Maylene Armijo, the Director of Economic Development. So after the direction from the commission at the last meeting, Economic Development staff worked to write the scope of work based on the resolution presented in the meeting. And so we've done that. We've identified a contractor, EPS, to complete the market study. The contract's been signed, and they are on track to complete the study and be able to present at the January 14th meeting.
Thank you. So we will have this report by the 14th. Would there be any injury to the project if we were to defer this appropriation until we actually have the report? I'm just curious about the timing of our vote tonight.
Madam Chair, I would have to defer to.
I don't think so, because the project's kind of is on hold until the market analysis is done. And so we're at a holding point. And once the market analysis is done, then we would continue with the design.
Okay, and maybe I can ask the sponsor, is there an urgency to doing this tonight as opposed to
There is,
in January?
There is, Madam Chair, just because, if we say that we're going to not earmark this, then it pushes the project back, and then we're pushing it back another month. And I know it just sounds like I'm exaggerating, but every time we push this project back a month or 2 months, we walk in and it's $2 million more. And our concern as a community is that we want to make sure that this project is moving forward as promised, and if you do not earmark the money now, what happens is the wheels that are turning to make sure that this project, they all put it on hold. The understanding from me and the county manager, there's nothing on hold right now. We're just doing a market study to help the providers of the RFP be able to run this facility at a high, for a high success rate. Just so you know, we did get contacted by the company today that is doing the market study, and they called us for more information about the work that we've done, the scope that we've done. They're already on it. I had an hour conversation with them on the phone today, and they're already starting to do their research. And so we feel that we really would like to have this taken care of tonight. So everything moves forward smoothly without any delay.
Madam Chair.
Let me just clarify. Didn't you just say everything was on hold until the study was done?
Let me clarify that, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Everything is not completely on hold. The design of the building, we're at a holding point, but there are other activities that are moving forward. We have the grading plan. We need to grade the site for for the visitor center and for the fire station. We still have to do a plating action for the property, so there's several other activities that are happening, but the building itself is kind of in a holding pattern, but there are other activities that are continuing that are helping the project move forward.
Is this funding required for those grading and other activities? Because it seems to me we recently appropriated other funding for this. But I don't know, $1 million?
Funding is for the final construction of the project.
This funding is final, for final construction. Okay, but final construction isn't going to be underway until the study is done?
With it's
Okay.
only about a month away before we start back up doing that work.
Okay. And let me ask the county manager, so I know we already appropriated a certain amount of money. I know the county's committed to the operations. How much money has the county commission already committed to this project?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think we can find that out really quickly, but just for this, and we'll answer that question. I'm hoping Shirley is doing that right now. But as far as the 1.5 million, what you could do, and we did this on the UNMH appropriation, you can earmark the money tonight contingent on the study, and I had talked to Commissioner Quesada about that, and correct? So you can earmark it, so we can set it to the side, and you can approve that.
That's basically what I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Quesada.
That's basically my understanding for tonight, is that, we're just approving an earmark, just so there's no, slowing down in the process, that's all. And then once we get the market study, the market analysis, I truly believe that we'll just move forward and we don't have to bring this back to the committee, to the commission. And so I'm just trying to get the business done so we can make sure that this moves forward smoothly and that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Yeah, just so to be clear, the resolution does say that, that basically the project will not go to final design or construction until the market study is done, and then the market study has to come before the commission to look at like we said about those two, some of the uses. And so the earmark is just that. It's not an appropriation at this point. It's like a set aside. I don't have an issue with that because it is contingent on getting the market study. At that point, we will have to have that discussion. What does the market study say, to inform? I think with, and I could be wrong if I'm speaking for you, Commissioner Quesada, but I think a lot of it is, I think what he's concerned with is that it shows that there is a, support for the project moving forward, and that also, they're going to be seeking legislative money. We've heard from a member of the legislature, they would be looking at seeking some funds for operations. And as part of this too, we will be looking at the budget for operations. So it's important for us to know what it is, what our responsibilities and obligations are, and that's basically what this study is about.
And as you know, we've raised, a lot of our capital through the state. It's some from the county, it's some from the city, but a majority has been going over years and years and years, raising money, 500 here, $1 million there, going back and forth to Santa Fe for all these years to get us to a point to where we're doing something that we know the community needs. Just to touch on the conversation I had with the company that's doing the market study, they asked all the right questions, and they didn't give me a final, definitely not nowhere near a final assessment, but he did say when he looked at it, and he knows the area, what a great idea. So that was kind of, it was kind of a really happy kind of phone call. I was on the fence of what he might say, but again, he has not done his job. I'm not putting him under the bus here, but his initial reaction was, that it's got a lot of great components to it. But then he asked us, who's going to be, running the event center and who's going to be running that. And, we can't really, Ida can't disclose it. I don't work for the West Central Community Development Group. But all I could tell this commission tonight is that they already have people on board who already have those businesses in place that really want to sign a deal to run the event center, to work the commercial kitchen, and put a tap room in. Many breweries have shown a lot of interest in a tap room on the west side because that's an untapped market. No pun intended. I intended it, I did. So, we feel very confident about the market study at this point, we feel very confident that we're doing the right thing, and we've listened to the community for countless amounts of years. So, again, I'm asking support to earmark this money so we can move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is this money for capital, operations, undetermined, unrestricted? Okay. And do we know how much the commission has already committed to this? The capital? No, I do understand the point if this is a demonstration to the legislature that the county has a stake in it. That makes sense. It does just seem,
Madam Chair.
I don't understand the timing of this.
Madam Chair, to date, the county has put in 1.7 million. Sure, they all came from, from general obligation bonds, Parks and Rec, and general obligation facility bonds.
So 1.7, and then there's a certain amount of state capital outlay?
Yeah, there is. To date, the state has given 2.6 million, and we're anticipating asking for another 3 million from the state. To date, the city of Albuquerque has allocated 4 million with an additional request from their 2019 GO bonds of 1.5 million that's anticipated being asked for. So right now we have 7.3 million total, and we need the additional to make up the 12 million. 1.5 that is being asked to be earmarked tonight, 1.5 from the city, and then 3 million from the state to get the total to 12 million.
And that is for
construction.
A phase or for the whole project?
There are two phases. The first phase is by far the largest part of the project. The second phase is a restaurant, a 4,000 square foot restaurant. I don't have an exact cost for that yet, but it's compared to the size, the magnitude of the first phase, that's 21,000 square feet. The restaurant's 4,500 square feet. So the second phase is significantly smaller.
All right, do you have any other questions or comments about this? I can't remember, do we have a motion?
I'm sorry, I forgot to state my name. Lisa Manuel with Bernalillo County Public Works.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are next on HR, revisions to rules and regs.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Bernadette Perez, the Director of HR. This request is for proposed amendments to the rules and regulations. The primary driver for these changes and the majority of the changes are for the implementation of the Chronos project. That's a timekeeping system that we're getting ready to implement. So a lot of the rules in the system required some changes to rules and regs and our process. Section 1300 changes will provide clarity regarding unclassified positions, and that will include items that were previously covered in sections 1500, and we will be deleting section 1500 in order to accommodate that change.
And I did send you all an email last week with kind of a high-level summary of the changes, so I will stand for any questions.
Second, commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Sorry, thank you.
All right, we are now on 12F, Bernalillo County Affordable Housing Nonprofit, MOU.
Madam Chair,
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Betty Valdez. I'm the Director for Bernalillo County Housing. And I took this before my nonprofit board earlier. You might know them. They're a rough crew. I am here to ask for approval of the MOU between the Bernalillo County Affordable Housing Nonprofit and Bernalillo County. This MOU is to share expertise and assistance and resources where needed and work collaboratively. I've been here since 3 o'clock, I'm sorry. Collaboratively between the nonprofit and the county. And I will stand for any questions.
Approval?
Right, we have a motion and second, and I think we heard this several hours ago. 6 hours ago, maybe?
What, 6?
Seemed like a
yes.
Seemed like a long time. All right, so if, we have a motion and second. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, we're now on 13A, Behavioral Health Initiative Update. Margaret, you have 2 items here. Is one a priority over another, or?
No, ma'am. Madam Chair, we can.
Is the bridging behavioral health, is that are those
That's the commercials?
the videos?
Yes. Julie, do you have a login to this, or is it? Madam Chair, would you like to see the bridging behavioral health first, or do you have a preference?
Up to you.
All right. With that, I'll just jump right in the interest of time, I will do a flyby, and feel free to stop me at any time if I am going too quickly. Margarita Chavez Sanchez, Department of Behavioral Health Services. And so our intent in this quarter report is to be able to provide information on budget and the revenue and expenditures in the behavioral health initiative and through the Department of Behavioral Health Services. You all are familiar with the ballot question that passed this tax. This is a snapshot of all of the funds that we have received since the initiation of this tax, including the first year, which was not a full year, and this current year to date. This is updated as of, I believe, yesterday. So this is a current document. Also, the big number that we hear is what amount of funds have gone out into the community. That is a $19.973 million amount with a balance of $71 million in that space as well. So we have 2 different levels of allocations. One is recurring, one is non-recurring. The recurring allocations from all of our focus areas total in the amount of $18.9 million. We have planned budget in the amount of $22.5 million, and that leaves us an available balance of $3.5 million as well. Non-recurring allocations, again, the total amount of allocated funds from the non-recurring funds is $52 million, and the balance, including the fund balance with that, and including, sorry, I'm like tripping over my tongue because I'm trying to speak as fast as I can. A 20% reserve is also included in that one-time dollars. So minus the 20% reserve, what we have in that one-time fund pot is just over $9 million. So again, this is that snapshot. Reoccurring available balance, 3.5, and non-reoccurring is 9.6. Now, these figures are not factoring in the items that were passed today. You all have seen this. You have the slides in front of you as well to break down each of the programs and the allocations. Some of the upcoming projects that we have, the three up top, are those that you saw today. Other projects that you have that are coming very quickly is school-based health centers that is being vetted through the prevention subcommittee last month and this month. Intensive case management for high utilizers. Many of you have heard already about our high utilizer studies, and peer case management for the aging population. Questions? Any questions?
It's like ready to go boom. Meeting is adjourned. No. Thank you very much. Commissioners, are there any questions for Ms. Chavez on these wonderful slides? Okay. Good job.
Sorry. So I'll quickly show the videos that we are, or I'm sorry, not the videos, the commercials that we are airing. There was a request that these be played for you all.
If you are in crisis, you're not alone. Even when pain and depression feel impossible, like there's no end in sight, remember, there is a way forward. Are you hurting, emotionally drained, considering self-harm? If you are in a crisis situation, call 911 and request a mobile crisis team. You are enough. You matter. Your life is worth fighting for. Bernalillo County, investing in changing lives and promoting health.
All right. So this is the commercial that's being aired. Now it is under the crisis arena. The other we have is on prevention.
It takes a village to raise a child, but unfortunately, sometimes children raise themselves.
Traumatic events can have negative, lasting effects on health and well-being. Adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. Bernalillo County Behavioral Health Services is proud to have a network of services to fit your specific needs. We are here to ensure that no one falls through the cracks. We are Bernalillo County.
Visit burnco.org.
I think the computer might have died, but.
Oh, really?
But
That's how long you've been here.
But yeah, so those are our two commercials. So that's part of our Bridging Behavioral Health. A larger discussion is a larger, more robust marketing plan, but we wanted to make sure that if you haven't seen them live, we want to make sure that you all and the public has an opportunity to view those. We have an agreement now that we have a different commercial every quarter, so we'll be getting ready to film for the next quarter.
I really like that, Chavez, that the last one showed, the services underneath there. One of my concerns was when we were starting to put that out there, that we really did have the capacity when people did call, and that they would be accepted into services, so it wouldn't be like, oh, we're full, or we don't have enough room, or we, that sort of thing. I think that was very important, so that when they do call, that there are services available. Thank you very much. I think that, let's see, is there more? So, is that it? Oh, so she's already taken off. So I do, okay. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, the staff. You guys are great. And just want to wish you very happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I hope you have a safe holiday. Again, thank you all for your service to our community. This meeting is adjourned.